All right, everyone, welcome to the Monday top of the week edition of Reality Check here on the home of Black Talk Media. It's none other than WURD 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com for your live stream dial, and also WURD TV, WURD app as well. I'm Charles Ellison. I'm your host, executive producer, also creator of Reality Check, your daily dose of politics, public policy, and public affairs in general here on WURD. I'm at Ellison Report, hashtag Reality Check on Twitter, on twitter.com, at Ellison Report, hashtag Reality Check. So two things real quick. First, the phone lines are open, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. But we want to talk about violence. We want to talk about violence in Philadelphia. This is a growing blind spot as far as city leadership is concerned, because they haven't come up with any effective strategy to address that, or any effective investments in strategies to mitigate, to significantly reduce or eliminate this epidemic level of gun violence that's happening throughout the city of Philadelphia. We are now nearly half of where of the number of homicide victims we had last year. We are nearly halfway there to either matching or surpassing the number of homicide of murder victims that we had in Philadelphia last year. We have 245 homicides counted in 2021 thus far in Philadelphia. That should astound anyone who's listening. You should be literally, when you hear a number like that, that should stop you from doing what you're doing right now, especially if you're a Philadelphia city resident. That should stun you. That should nauseate you. But that's where Philadelphia is, 36% more homicides than where we were the same time last year. In 2020, at the same time, we had about 180 homicides. Now we're at 245. We had 500 homicides in Philadelphia last year. We are just 5 murders away from 250. We're just 5 murders away from half that, and we're not even in July yet. We haven't even hit July 4th, so it is really bad. Here to talk about that and the effort to get some sort of action around this aggressively, to make the necessary investments to combat that violence is Reverend Gregory Holston. He is chair of the Criminal Justice Committee for Black Clergy of Philadelphia and vicinity. He joins us by phone here on Reality Check. And once again, the phone lines are open if you'd like to engage in this discussion, or if you have questions for Reverend Holston. Reverend, how are you doing, sir? Good morning.
I'm doing well, and you have correctly structured the conversation of what the seriousness of that we're facing here in the city. Thank you.
Yeah, we talk about that every day, and we highlight that data point, that statistic. People need to hear it to understand how significant and severe this is. So, Philadelphia City Council is meeting right now,
yeah.
As a whole, even though they didn't bother to tell anybody about that. I still I cannot understand. I'm sorry, real quick before I let you answer this question, Reverend. I don't understand why council is only tweeting on Thursdays or letting people know that they just meet on Thursdays, because they clearly meet every other day of the week. There are intense negotiations over several tax cut plans and also funding anti-violence projects. Black clergy and other groups, you've demanded $100 million investment in anti-violence efforts. Where are we now with that?
Well, there 2 weeks ago, of 13 council people signed on to a letter asking for what they call the youth-powered anti-violence agenda. And they said for a minimum of $50 million, and many of them believe for $100 or $150 million, and are pushing for that. And they're proposing that to the mayor as a part of the mayor's budget right now. Mm-hmm. And those negotiations are going on right now. And I'm a part, not just of Black clergy, but a coalition of anti-gun violence groups and individuals from across the city that has been pushing for $100 million and more for anti-gun violence. And now let's put it in perspective. The reality is we have 245 murders today. We had 499 murders last year. We spend over $800 billion on policing, probably about $1 billion on law enforcement, and those are where the numbers that have been created. It is clear we need another approach. We have never made a strong, massive investment in prevention in the city of Philadelphia, nothing near $100 million. In fact, oftentimes anti-gun violence groups are given merely a couple of $1,000s and expected to actually do things to actually end gun violence. Okay. We know that it takes real investment in our community, real investment in our people who are dedicated to reaching out and reaching our young people and providing them work development opportunities and healing for the trauma that they have faced over the years. Almost everybody involved in gun violence has seen gun violence themselves or been a victim of gun violence themselves. So it's a continuing cycle that needs to be broken and can only be broken by building strong relationships, and we need to invest in the people who do that.
When we talk about a prevention strategy or prevention framework in Philadelphia, what does that look like to you? You know, especially if it's a fully funded or an adequately funded prevention strategy.
Well, the strategies range from a broad-based group of strategies. Some of the strategies include what are called, certain are called messengers. Messengers that are credible messengers for our young people to reach out to them. Some of our young people who are 15, 16, 17, 18 engaged in this activity can only be reached by those who are 25, 26, and 27. And those credible messengers who have experienced those things, who want to help, who want to reach out, who have gotten their lives changed and want to change the lives of others, need to be supported financially to make that happen. Others are families that have experienced this violence over years, and they need real healing. And so organizations like Mothers in Charge and Every Murder is Real need financial support because they do healing for the entire family. We recognize that those, again, who are victims of violence often become people who are perpetrators of violence. And so if you're not reaching that kid that's 12 years old now and that family now that suffered violence, you may be dealing with that kid when he's 17 years old and he is someone who becomes a perpetrator. And so we need to invest in those groups. But we also need to invest in workforce development and training. When people have other opportunities in life, they often make different choices. And so we need to improve that as well. And we also need to reach out and make sure employment opportunities are available for everyone. And so all of these, this plethora of things that need to be done. Our rec centers need to be improved. Our sports programs need to be increased. All of these things are community-based organizations that need this kind of infusion of dollars to do the kind of work that can transform our community.
What's the holdup in these negotiations? So the mayor has asked for $36 million in violence prevention in his budget. He may say, or people within the Kenney administration may say, hey, listen, in Chicago, which is a city double the size of Philadelphia, Mayor Lori Lightfoot, after initially she just had recommended $9 million, but then they were able to bump it up to $36 million in Chicago. So he's saying that's double the size of Philly. $36 million is sufficient. That's maybe, I'm just kind of trying to sort of think where they're coming from their perspective, but what are you hearing in those negotiations?
Their perspective is wrong. It's wrong because they center law enforcement before they center prevention. And anything that you call a public health crisis, which is what our own public health department has called gun violence for the last 3 years, a public health emergency. If you call it that, you got to handle it in a public health way. And a public health way starts with massive resources being poured into our community to help around prevention and intervention and seeing those as the key way of stopping the violence. Law enforcement doesn't stop the violence. It really comes after the violence has happened to try to create some system of justice. But what stops violence is prevention. And we simply do not spend enough money on it. Let me give you one quick other statistic. Our good friends from Live Free a couple of years ago shared this number with me. If you want to pull somebody out of this kind of lifestyle of gun violence, you need to spend about $25,000 to $35,000 for each individual. She said, how many individuals do that in the city of Philadelphia? Well, the studies have shown it's about 0.5% of the population involved in gun violence. It's not a lot. And so about 3,500 people are really involved in gun violence. If you spend about $30,000 on each one, that gets you to $100 million. That's the kind of infusion we really need. And people say that's a lot of money, but we spend anywhere from $45,000 to $61,000 on each individual that we put away in prison.
Yeah.
And so if we're going to spend that much money on law enforcement and imprisoning people, why don't we spend that much money on keeping them out?
Yeah, yeah. The other thing I wonder about too, Reverend, is the level of support you're getting from City Council. I mean, is City Council do you think City Council is putting enough pressure on the mayor to reach those demands, to get that kind of needed investment for violence prevention? I noticed Reverend Collier, who's the president of Black Clergy, gave a very stirring invocation. The few folks quietly who were saying it was inappropriate, I know it stunned Philadelphia City President Darrell Clark when we heard it here live on WURD during City Council Live. I thought it was quite essential to do. I thought it was quite appropriate. I thought that's something that's the kind of pressure, that's the kind of language that council needs to hear in a moment like this.
Absolutely. It was prophetic. It was powerful. It was on point, and it was a cry of people in need. And if any role that clergy has to play, it is that prophetic cry of speaking for those who cannot speak for themselves. And so it was extremely appropriate under the circumstances. I will say that he was supposed to testify 2 days earlier, and some technical difficulties didn't allow him to be able to testify. So this was the only way he could reach out and make sure that his thinking, his prayer, are actually heard by City Council. And I'm thanking God that he did it. This is a desperate situation. 245 lives already. This is not something that should be handled as a political football, but should be handled where all sides are come together and find a way to create enough resources, particularly in this time in which we've gotten over $1 billion additionally from the American Recovery Act. We have more than enough money to be able to spend on our children. And so he gave a desperate cry, a prophetic cry that had to be said, and he should be applauded for it.
Yeah, we keep hearing about, so the city is receiving over $1.4 billion from the American Rescue Plan. That's the city government of Philadelphia. Plus there's additional monies coming from other federal sources. We keep hearing about federal monies that have been funneled to, first of all, there was some violence prevention, anti-violence, community policing efforts that the Biden administration has also recommended or has already triggered. They've cut checks for. We keep hearing about federal monies for violence prevention have come to the city of Philadelphia. So why such a low figure? Why just $36 million? I don't understand. Where, first of all, we should be able to use those federal relief dollars, correct, Reverend? And two, where's all that other federal violence prevention money?
And so there is $1.4 million that went to the schools as well, and some of that should be used for prevention. 1.4 here for the city, and those dollars. This should not be a question. It's not, and needless to say, there's a $3 billion surplus at the state level, another $7 billion at the state level of the American Recovery Act that may be able to be accessed. we do have the revenue. We do have it. And so there's no reason we can't do $100 million. And we're asking people directly call the mayor, just directly to call the mayor and tell him that in this emergency and this crisis, this is the only response to come up with an historic amount of revenue, a historic amount of investment. And we want to be clear with community groups on the ground, because they are the best people to solve this gun violence problem. Don't have all that money stuck in government somewhere. Put it on the ground with the people, so the people can get out there and be able to address our children. That is the best place for the money, and it should happen now.
What?
I don't understand.
Does it have to always go to community groups who are on the ground, however? I mean, why not come up with $100 million or even more monies? Have there been discussions about, maybe, I don't know, like a basic income pilot or program or initiative that I've seen happen in other cities that go direct, for example, direct payments to Philadelphia public school students who are like most in need or most at risk for engaging in or being victims of gun violence, or it's just, I've seen experimentations in other cities where there are direct payments going to families or the most at risk families who are in high violence areas, and we've seen some success with that. And I just wonder, there's a lot of money being thrown around at different organizations and different groups and different efforts, but do the people who really directly get impacted by that violence, when we know that this is an economic problem at its core, why aren't they getting funds?
Two things. One, there are some community groups that do some paying of salary for people to be engaged in some of these programs as a way of encouraging them to be in the program instead of being involved in violence. So we know that there are already some community groups on the ground doing that. Secondly, I know City Council has, as part of its poverty plan from over a year ago, has that kind of direct payment in that plan. And I'm not opposed to some dollars being used in that way for that particular program. I'd like to see $100 million for this and maybe some more dollars for that. But I am not opposed. I think that's a tremendous idea in this time period of moving poverty, because a lot of this is related directly to poverty. And when you have the poorest big city in the country, 25% poverty rate still, we have to address that poverty in black and brown communities.
Yeah, that's true. Hey, Reverend, real quick, hold on. I just want to take a quick question from Maurice out of Southwest, who's calling in during our discussion here about violence on Reality Check. Maurice?
Yes, Reverend, I know you're out there doing hard work, but I keep hearing this $100 million plan. I don't see it mapped out. I mean, my first impression would be, with this hot summer coming up, is to do a summer jobs program to give these youths to have something to do. Also, it could be operated out of our playgrounds, like as far as like Charles likes to say, they could be cleaning up the neighborhood and make Philadelphia a better place and have people cleaning their own neighborhood. Another thing would be able to match funds if somebody wanted to open like a corner store, long as they can bring their half and the city match them, and maybe $5,000 to $10,000 if a person has a stern business plan. So that these young black youths can actually see black people that own something instead of always going to a foreigner and not seeing somebody their own color buying groceries from, and things like that. And also with the schools, bring back some of the arts programs back and some of the job programs as far as car repair, electricity, maybe some brick mason, carpentry. Bring that back into the school program. I just hear a whole lot of talk, and all I hear is a whole lot of walk, because I don't see nobody doing anything but talking, and then nobody laying out no plan. Like city council, like the police commissioner, she could be having a thing where she's out recruiting black police officers, or Dr. Height could be out sending out money to bring in black teachers. I don't see none of that. I should run for mayor, because I'm tired of all y'all want to do is give money to death hustlers, and I'm tired of it.
All right, Maurice. Go ahead, Reverend Holston.
There is a plan called the Youth Powered Anti-Violence Plan that was outlined by several council people, include Councilwoman Helen Ginn. I would suggest you look that up online. That lays out how that $100 million would be spent, which includes recreation centers, which includes programs around community programs, some just like you talked about that are already going on that would be invested in, and other areas as well in terms of intervention and healing and cure violence, which is the Credible Messenger program. Those few programs have been found to be effective in other cities and other places, and so people are looking for them. But some of this money also is going to be used for some creative things. And so to be able to hear your ideas and your thoughts of what could be done creatively, there are going to be some of those dollars are going to be available for that too. And for folk on the ground who have never gotten any resources to be able to run that basketball league that saved lives, we're going to have dollars for them as well. So I'm looking for all of what you said, and a plan has been outlined and more. We got to be as creative as we possibly can now because of the emergency we're in, and we got to try a lot of different things.
We do, I mean, my thing, Reverend, is it seems like council seems to be prioritizing tax cuts right now over a conversation on and planning for violence prevention.
Mm-hmm. I would say the merit. Be quite frank about it. We brought this $100 million proposal to him back in March with Black Clergy. He was sat down with the mayor and his staff around this, and have not heard back from him. And from what I hear, the pushback is from the mayor, and the mayor has proposed these tax cuts. So and wants the tax cuts. So I look at that as that the mayor does prioritize tax cuts above gun violence prevention, or at least believes that his $35 million is enough. Which, by the way, it was $15 million before, so it's not like it's $35 million. He's adding additional on top of which was the 15 he had before, which all went into government and didn't really go out into the community. And so I have to say very clearly, he is prioritizing tax cuts. And that, what we're saying, is wrong. When you're in an emergency, you cannot tax cut. You cannot cut taxes when you're in an emergency. You have to handle the emergency first. And I don't understand that lack of mentality unless they really don't believe gun violence is an emergency in the first place.
We've been talking with Reverend Gregory Holston, who is chair of the Criminal Justice Committee at the Black Clergy of Philadelphia and vicinity. And Reverend Holston had been kind enough to give us a little bit of his time this morning to talk about this, the current negotiations over a proposed $100 million investment in violence prevention efforts in the city of Philadelphia, something that's desperately needed. And I'm sure we'll keep in touch with him and have him back on to see where they are. Reverend, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, and again, I just want to thank all the council people. 13 of them signed on to this proposal for $100 million. Want to thank their efforts and their push, and ask people, call the mayor, and say you want that $100 million for gun violence.
Definitely call the mayor. Start by going to phila.gov, and lighting up the mayor's phone lines to let him know, let the administration know you want that $100 million. You want an investment. You want an investment of the size too that Maurice out of Southwest, for example, hinted at. We want those kinds of creative solutions, those kind of aggressive solutions. Let me go ahead and break. Reverend, thanks so much for your time. Be safe out there. Let's break, and we'll be right back here on Reality Check.
COVID's put the good times on pause way too long. It's time to press play, and COVID-19 vaccines are the way to do it. Now everyone 12 and older is eligible. Take your family and friends, because it's time to get back to the good times. Keep listening for vaccine locations near you, or text your zip code to 438-829. Message and data rates apply. We can do this. Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Hi, I'm Solomon Jones. I'm the morning drive host of Wake Up with Word here at WURD Radio in Philadelphia. This time last year, we couldn't go to work, school, church, or even out to eat. We were all separated and trying to be safe at home. People we knew and loved were getting sick and dying from COVID-19. Well, now there's a vaccine. It's safe, it's available, and it's free. Get the vaccine. It's the right thing to do. Think about those who got sick or died. Think about what they would tell you to do. And then do what I did. Get your free COVID-19 vaccine at blackdoctorsconsortium.com.
The WURD Radio newsletter, keeping you informed, engaged, and connected. Sign up by visiting wordradio.com. Scroll to the bottom of the page and type your email address under Connect with Us. You'll receive the latest information on WURD Radio, messages from our president and CEO, Sarah Lomax Reese, exclusive articles and multimedia content, and resources. Stay informed with the WURD Radio newsletter.
Reality Check
With Charles Ellison.
right now on WURD Radio.
And wordradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, WURD TV, and WURD app as well. Welcome to our roundtable session. We've got our roundtablers joining us who regularly rotate here on Reality Check, WURD. It is Andra Gillespie, who is a political science professor at Emory University, also author of Race in the Obama Administration, regularly joins us here on WURD. Always good to see her. She's down there in Atlanta. How are you doing, Professor?
I'm well. How are you?
All right, excellent, excellent. Also at Andra Gillespie on social media, on Twitter more specifically, you'll see her there, highly engaged. And the Honorable Senator Peter Groff, former senator, former Senate president of the Colorado Senate, also former Obama administration appointee, and also regular contributor, frequent contributor here on Reality Check WURD. He's at Peter C. Groff. Senator, how are you doing, sir?
Well, Charles.
All right, excellent, excellent. So good to see you both. So, Andrew, start with you first, just to get your take on this recent scandal at the Justice Department, the news that we're seeing about this. Can't say that we're surprised, right? I mean, maybe we're surprised. I don't know, but because Trump was just, we always knew the type of person that he was, particularly as president. But what I find really big about this, really dangerous about this, is the people within the Justice Department, within the bureaucracy, who were steadily carrying this out. I think that that's kind of the missed conversation here, right? Like, I mean, we're not asking enough questions about, okay, well, who are these people? Who are these civil servants? Who are these career attorneys within the Justice Department who thought that this was appropriate, who thought that this was a lawful thing to do? And they kept doing it anyway. They carried out the president's commands. I worry about that, and other people within government who have the capacity for that kind of behavior or conduct. Go ahead, Professor.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm not surprised that President Trump was spying on, his perceived political enemies, or was leaning on the Justice Department, or the Justice Department picked up their cues and decided that they would just do what Trump wanted them to do in terms of investigating people who could be possible leaks. Other presidents have gone after leaks and have gone after them aggressively, but this is on a completely different level from what we've seen happen in previous administrations. So that's interesting to point out, and just the extent to which they were going after journalists, and that they were going after sitting members of Congress that they perceived to be the source of these particular leaks. I wait the report and to see a little bit more. At this point, it sounds somewhat sort of beyond credulity that people like Jeff Sessions, William Barr, and Rod Rosenstein didn't know what was going on, or that they didn't order it. And so I want to be sure that, it's very clear about sort of, what might motivate somebody who's sort of a little bit lower on the hierarchy to go do this. And so, again, there were loyalists, who were sometimes even sort of below the top most appointed official level, who were willing to carry out, what the president's perceived or implied desires were. And so that in and of itself is troubling, that people lost their moral compass.
Yeah, that, and Peter, your thoughts on that too, because we always hear every now and then this commentary that there were guardrails, that, things were bad during the Trump presidency, but there were always, some guardrails, folks within government who knew better, who understood, a lot of things that he wanted to do, they slowed down. In this particular instance, we don't see things slowing down. We see, folks carrying out those commands and still pressing it. And so it worries me about, the types of, public servants or career civil servants who are in the current administration now, and also with this bodes for the future, and how the federal government should manage a situation like that, how government in general manages a situation like that, because people who work for government, they have ideological leanings and biases too.
They do, and I actually worked in a department, so I know, and I had a senior level position there, so I know that when an order comes from the White House and you go to your staff or those folks who work with you, and you say, we need to do X, Y, and Z, they will generally do X, Y, and Z, whether they agree with it or whether they don't. They're doing their job. So, we still don't know how these orders were carried out, who did them, were they closely held to senior staff, and other lower level appointees did it, or did career service do it? How much did they have involved? So I think we need to kind of wait, and hopefully there'll be a hearing so we can figure out how deep this goes. But it's not a surprise. I mean, it's similar to what Richard Nixon did. Richard Nixon had his enemies list and had his Department of Justice try and go after those folks. So we've been through this before, and there was kind of a purge of folks. But generally with the career service folks that I worked with, they did their job, they did what was asked, whether they agreed or not, they did what they were supposed to do. So we'll just have to see what an investigation, if there is one, what that comes up with.
How do you both think that Democrats in Congress should handle this? Because now that's the next stage, right? As you said, Peter, Andrew, going back to you, and then Peter, your thoughts on it, where, Democrats have got to investigate, well, not just as Democrats, this is not a partisan exercise. This is something they're obligated to do. They must do as the legislative branch, as the oversight branch for the federal government. And so how do you think that's going to go? How do you think it should go?
Oh, I think sort of how it will go and how it should go will probably be two different things.
Right.
I will defer to the lawyers on this. I mean, I think part of this investigation is whether or not some of this activity was criminal. And I think that that's going to be a lot of the debate, is that there are things that are highly unethical, but not necessarily illegal in terms of the letter of the law. And I think that that creates an opportunity. We really need to have a reckoning point about what's the difference between operating by norm versus operating by statute. And for so long, I think people have thought that they've understood what the norms are. Donald Trump trashed pretty much every one of them while he was president. And it's time to codify that there's a certain code of conduct for the president, and that the relationship between the White House and the Department of Justice should be the way we think the norms are. Mm-hmm. I think the bigger issue would probably be sort of sunlight. And so if Congress can play any role sort of, in the immediate short term, it is to expose, okay, here's what happened, to take the internal investigatory report, make sure that it's given the light of day for people to be able to realize, especially those who were directly victimized, how much their lives were intruded on. I mean, we know that it's supposed to be like, here are the phone numbers they called, here are the emails, like addresses to which they sent stuff to. But if there's any more for us to know, like what that is, and then that should be done as an example of what not to do again. going forward. Whether or not, there are civil or criminal kind of liability sort of involved in that, I'll leave up to the lawyers to decide. I suspect that, we're not going to see Bill Barr go to jail for anything, but, his reputation will be further tarnished by this.
So Peter, what does the lawyer and the legislator and you think? And that's a very good point that Andra made, because, we're, a lot of the way that presidents behave is based on traditions and norms, on things that aren't codified. And then that does present a problem. People, and actually people, the average citizen, the average person sort of assumes that they are acting based on actual code, on actual laws, on actual statutes, on actual rules that govern how a president is supposed to operate. But no, it's just things that we've just been used to doing for generations, for centuries.
No, I think both of you are correct. I think the legislator in me would want to hold a hearing, get some people under oath, and really try and dig deep and see who knew what, who was doing what, and how. I think that what Andrea said in terms of what's illegal and what is immoral are completely two different things. Remember, a year and a half or so ago, maybe a little bit further, the Attorney General was being grilled. The Attorney General, Bill Barr, was being grilled by then Senator Kamala Harris. And the question was, have you followed orders to investigate or subpoena anyone from the White House? Has that order come from the White House? And he talked about, well, what do you mean by suggest? I don't know really what suggest means. So, I mean, you're going to get a lot of that, particularly from him, because these are not stupid people. Yeah. So, they may have divvied it up so that the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing. In a department that is as large as justice, that's easy to do. Andrea, I need for you to go do 2 or 3 things for me. Charles, you need to do these 2 or 3 things, and then we'll piece it together in a senior staff meeting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. No, they're not stupid at all. They totally understand what the deal is. We're talking with Peter Groff and also Andrea Gillespie, regular roundtablist here on Reality Check WURD. We're in our weekly Monday roundtable session here on Reality Check WURD. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, more roundtable session with Groff and Gillespie here on Reality Check WURD 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, throughout the nation, throughout the world, WURD TV and WURD app. Let's stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
You know that feeling? Like every door is closing and you just can't see a way out? Being unemployed, underemployed, or just out of school can feel like that. But when you find the right tools, suddenly everything just clicks. FindSomethingNew.org offers resources that help develop new skills that can position you for careers in today's growing industries, from healthcare and manufacturing to cybersecurity and alternative energy. Find your path to a new career at FindSomethingNew.org. A message from the Ad Council.
Welcome, Black. It's time to reawaken, reopen, and renew as WURD kicks off our annual 4WURD Early Bird Membership Special. We've stood together every step of the way during the pandemic. Here at WURD, our hosts and producers, elders, parents, children, teachers, doctors, and community leaders stood up, shared resources, and supported each other through the airwaves, virtual events, and of course, the phone lines. We've stayed connected by every means necessary. Let's welcome the new season, the reopening of the city, and our new normal together. Stand with WURD. Start or renew your sustaining 4WURD membership for the special price of $75. Or if you just want to support the work we're doing, there is now an option to become a digital 4WURD member for as little as $5 per month. Visit WURDradio.com/earlybird between now and June 19th to take advantage of our early bird membership special. With Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
All right, we're back at it here on Reality Check WURD. Gillespie and Groff joining us for our regular weekly Monday roundtable session. I'm Charles Ellison. Hashtag Reality Check at Ellison Report. Also, Andrea Gillespie is at Andrea Gillespie as well on Twitter, and Peter Groff is at Peter C. Groff on Twitter as well. Andrea, your assessment of President Biden in Europe, did the G7 summit, he's meeting with NATO countries, he's recommitting or, at least publicly announcing or asserting America's recommitment to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Still, there's a lot of worry that all of this is very short-lived, because there's a huge lack of confidence globally, but particularly from Europe, in American democracy, or in us being in this kind of place we're in right now a few years from now, right? There's no guarantee there will be a President Biden or there will be a President Harris in 2024, 2025. There's all kinds of reason to still worry that we'll go right back to, we could reelect a President Trump in 2024, or someone that's like him, who's much smarter than him. And so I wonder, like, if this has really been effective, this European trip. I mean, how effective has it been in your eyes?
So I actually do view this trip as having been effective. I understand the critique and the concern, and I think it's real and it needs to be articulated, but I do worry that perhaps it's been overstated a little bit. So yeah, I mean, I think that there's a legitimate concern about whether or not America's democracy is stable, and we still have to think about that. Those of us who are living within the borders have to be very aware of that and to be vigilant against that. And I think that our allies have a legitimate reason to, be skeptical or to be guarded, or to make sure that they're shoring up their other alliances in case America falls out. But I think that President Biden's reception was actually pretty warm. And there is a very clear contrast, and I don't know if I'm just believing sort of Secretary of State Antony Blinken's sort of reiteration of this on multiple talk shows yesterday. But the public opinion suggests that people are much more confident in President Biden's abilities than they are in President Trump's abilities. And I think just the question is sustenance. And it's up to us as citizens to make sure that we elect the right types of people to succeed President Biden when that time comes, who, will carry on that particular vision, who believe in multilateralism, who believe in maintaining alliances that have existed for decades, and who doesn't go at this kind of completely go at it alone approach, and doesn't necessarily pay attention to kind of norms, customs, and obligations that we've established for ourselves since the end of World War II.
Yeah. Peter, what do you think? Your assessment, you watch these things very carefully, very closely as well, and your assessment of it, do you think also concerns are maybe a little bit too overblown? We may see polls, however, show like nearly 60% of Americans, they feel confident about Biden's ability to handle foreign policy, to handle meetings like this. But still, are we going to have a situation here where 60% of the electorate is going to feel the same way come 2024? And then we got to worry about voter suppression, these voter suppression strategies, and, restricting people's right to vote. The electorate might feel one way, but this new multi-state nefarious system that's being set up by Republicans, it could give us a totally different outcome.
Well, I think the Biden administration really had two objectives. There's obviously the policy piece, and that's kind of a broader question, but it was one to let folks know that, yes, the president can handle these meetings. He understands the importance of relationships, particularly those very close ally relationships that Andrea just mentioned. But also the fact to kind of give the world, again, that view that America is back and it's also going to be responsible, at least for right now. So you can trust us to do the right thing. The announcement around of the vaccine and the worldwide distribution, a lot of that was to say, we're back, we're responsible, we're no longer a bully and fascist. So I think from that standpoint, I think it's gone very, very well. We'll have to see what happens when he meets with the former KGB officer later on this week. But clearly, I think the meetings in England were good. The pullouts with Merkel and the other folks, Johnson and the other couple of folks that he met with individually, also went very well. Yeah. So I think they're happy to this point. But I think that the question in terms of either electoral stability or democratic stability, I think, are a bigger issue. Obviously, the democracy is hanging on a razor's edge, and the world knows that. The world saw what happened on January 6th, so there's concern about that. But in terms of kind of that electoral stability, that happens all the time, right? So they also understand that Americans could change their mind. I would say outside of Reagan and That would have been 84, Clinton 92, maybe. There was no kind of guarantee for a second term for any president in the modern era. So they understand that those things could change, but they also understand that President Trump, they hope, was an outlier. You can have a Democratic president, you can have a Republican president, but America is America, and it's going to operate within those bounds. What we saw with Donald Trump was completely out of bounds, and they know that, and they hope that he stays gone.
Yeah, let's hope so. Let's hope they're right. You know, I want to go on to domestic issues, domestic problems, Andra, the infrastructure deal. So, you know, Biden started at over $2 trillion, like $2.3 trillion. Now he's saying, or the White House is indicating or signaling, that they may be okay with just $1 trillion, you know, so they can reach some sort of bipartisan compromise. Your thoughts on this one, how this is going, all of this, that there is a sense among congressional Democrats that, okay, we'll get $1 trillion now in some kind of bipartisan deal with Republicans, but we can get the rest, we can get other features that we want through budget reconciliation. But that all depends on West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin and Arizona Senator Kyrsten Sinema, right?
I'd say, yeah, that's probably a pretty fair assessment. You know, in the sort of immediate short term, this is part of the nature of compromise. So I think we need to sort of take that sort of seriously, that President Biden's starting offer probably wasn't going to be where the final outcome ended up being. And especially when you have a 50-50 Senate, where Republicans still wield, you know, an important amount of control, and you have moderate Democrats who aren't necessarily sold on everything that's coming down, you know, from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, or everything that even their colleagues are proposing within the chamber, right? You have to sort of figure out how to work with people. And it's better to get some of what you want than to not get anything of what you want because you're clinging to principle. I think part of the you know, the bigger challenge is trying to figure out when Democrats stop even trying to negotiate with Republicans, and when it's appropriate to just move on and attempt to try to go it alone on these issues. And so, you know, there were Democrats who were done with the Republicans 2 weeks ago on infrastructure. Strategically, that's not where President Biden wanted to be. He wanted to at least get something that could at least lay claim to being bipartisan. And then I think the question will be for the rest of the year, okay, how much are Democrats actually willing to even go through the motions of trying to get a Republican support for issues, or how much are they going to try to define as reconciliation, get defined as reconciliation, so they can get as much of their agenda passed as possible.
Okay, so two big questions here, Peter. One, is the average Jane and Joe, you know, Tyrone and Tamika, right? I mean, are they really... are they really concerned about bipartisanship? I mean, so, I mean, is bipartisanship really a public obsession, or is it like a mainstream media kind of inside the Beltway pundit obsession? That's the first question. And the second question is, why are we compromising? You know, some people are saying this, especially a lot of progressives. Like, why are we compromising or trying to compromise with traitors?
Well, the first question is, I think, the average person listening to your show is concerned about outcomes and policies. How you get there, I'm sure they don't care. But if there is infrastructure throughout West Philadelphia, if there are buildings and schools that are rebuilt because of this money, that's what they care about. Whether Manchin's and Romney's name is on it, they don't care. They just want the outcome. Yeah. I think, secondly, to your point about what the president is doing and how the progressives might see it, you know, this is who the president is, right? I mean, we talk about authenticity all the time in terms of our elected officials. He grew up in a Senate. I served in a state Senate where bipartisanship was the norm. And so that's what he thinks, and that's how he thinks that you can get kind of grand outcomes. And so that's who he is. That's who we're dealing with. So, but I think he's also smart enough to see, well, we can only go but so far with this. So they have two tracks. If they can get $1 trillion out of a traditional infrastructure plan, that's fine. Then for the more human infrastructure piece, they can go through reconciliation. I suspect that you'd have Senators Manchin and Sinema there because of what you did on the bipartisan $1 trillion kind of traditional infrastructure plan. So I think there's a lot of moving pieces. We don't even really know what's in the plan yet, so we need to take a step back. Then once we know what's in the plan, then we can kind of chop it up. But I think the White House knows what they're doing. They have reconciliation in their back pocket, and that's what they're going to have to use.
Yeah, I think I mean, at the end of the day, I think we can all agree on that. The White House does know what it's doing. We have a White House that knows what it's doing. Go ahead, Andrea.
Yeah, I mean, for the progressives who want, to just basically forget about Republicans, I understand. And on some issues, it's probably appropriate to do that. But the reality of it is that that's the kind of talk and bravado that would be fine if you had a 70-seat majority, but you don't. And even within the caucus, they don't all agree. So, I get the importance and the urgency of these ideas, but there's the reality of the fact that there is heterogeneity of preferences within the caucus itself. The progressives haven't done a good enough job convincing the moderates of sort of, the workability of some of their plans. But now you want to say, like, well, we're in the majority. You've got a razor-thin majority with the vice president's vote, and now you're going to try to act like you have a bigger majority than you do. I would just caution people to just be realistic, and also to do the work of saying, if you've got some plans that, it's not just that it's a great idea because I know it's a great idea, my white paper said so, but that you've actually done the good job of persuasion. And I just don't see a whole lot of persuasion necessarily, and a lot of talking to people kind of within the caucus to get people on board with things.
Amen to that. Go ahead, Peter.
Follow up real quick on that. I know you want to move on.
No, go ahead.
But Andre's right. There's at least one progressive who gets a lot of run and a lot of attention for having never accomplished anything. They need to understand that there is a huge difference between serving in the majority and serving in the minority. Having served in both, I can tell you that. They need to figure out what they really, really want, put out a plan, and then, as Andrea said, work with moderates on how to get some of that in. They're kind of all or nothing, and I think a lot of that stems from the fact that some of them have not served in other elected offices before, so they don't understand how the process works. And the second piece is they think because of who they are surrounded by, who they represent, that that's really where the rest of the country and where the rest of the caucus should be. But that majority is built not in the Bronx, but it's built in Spotsylvania. It's built in Western Pennsylvania. That's where that majority is. And if you want to hold on to it, you need to work with those folks.
Yeah, you really do. Both fine points by both of you. I completely agree. Not much to argue against on that. Andrea, while we got about a minute or two left, is it possible to pass H.R. 4 instead of H.R. 1? Senator Joe Manchin has said, I'm open to H.R. 4. And we've had concerns. Peter, you and I have talked about this before. I mean, we had concerns that H.R. 4 was a huge, it was like people were biting off way more than they could chew based on the composition of the Senate with H.R. 1. So I kind of see a path for H.R. 4. I think Manchin, he's leaving it open to tweak the filibuster rules, bring it from 60 to a 55 vote threshold. And I think you can find like 4 Republicans out there who will vote for H.R. 4.
Well, I mean, the only one that I've heard who's actually already signed on to H.R. 4 has expressed a willingness to vote for it is Lisa Murkowski. So I think the question is, okay, if Murkowski goes, then you can probably get Susan Collins and you can probably get Mitt Romney. So I think you still have a problem.
Ben Sass, right? Ben Sass out of Nebraska, possibly. He talks that talk.
But I mean, but again, that I'm still trying to figure out sort of who the other person is. Like, is it Tim Scott? I hope it would be Tim Scott. But you're still going to have a problem. I would say by all means, comparing HR 1 to HR 4, HR 4 has a better chance of passage because this is about sort of an existing Voting Rights Act and sort of aligning it with Shelby County versus Holder and sort of bring pre-clearance back in. That's a lot easier lift than everything that's in HR 1. But I think we still have those challenges. And if this is where Manchin is willing to sort of, modify his stance on the filibuster in a way that's actually broader, okay, then that's great. But, there's still going to be challenges ahead.
Yeah. Peter, I know I got to let you go anyway. I'm just going to give Andrea the last word. We've got Andrea Gillespie at Andrea Gillespie and also political science professor at Emory University and author of Race in the Obama Administration. Also, Peter Groff his former president of the Colorado State Senate, former Obama White House appointee, both joining, and go to @PeterSeagroff on social media, on Twitter, both joining us here. Our regular roundtable is on Reality Check WRD. Always a pleasure to see you both. Always great conversation. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Okay, let's take a break, and we'll be right back here on Reality Check.
Last summer, Philadelphia stood up demanding justice and police accountability for the murders of George Floyd and Walter Wallace Jr. Hear firsthand accounts of the activism and the emotional toll in We Breathe, We Live, Brotherly Love Protest Stories, a first-person arts film presented by DBHIDS, Engaging Males of Color, premiering on Monday, May 24th at 8 p.m. on WHYY-TV and online. WURD Radio is a media partner for promoting mental wellness in Philadelphia.
Hey, $2 bill here, aka the rare one. Problem is, I'm so rare, people just saved me. But thanks to the new Cash Vibe with Quick Cash from the PA Lottery, I'm back in business. For just $2, you can get bigger jackpots starting at 150 grand. Plus Quick Cash, a chance to instantly win $2 or $6. Haha, it's good to be wanted.
Play Cash 5 with Quick Cash from the Pennsylvania Lottery. Must be 18 or older. Please play responsibly. Benefits older Pennsylvanians every day.
Lifting every voice till earth and heaven ring. This is WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Black Talk Media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDRadio.com.
Okay, phone lines are open, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Phone lines are open as we're waiting on Philadelphia area Congresswoman Mary Gay Scanlon. She is expected to join us, and she'll be calling in shortly. So phone lines are always open, of course, for our Philadelphia area elected officials, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900, in case you have a question. Also, are you looking for a job? WURD has got you covered. Just launched a brand new portal featuring jobs from some of Philadelphia's leading companies and arts organizations. If you go to the portal right now, you will see jobs from WURD Radio, Kimmel Center, Herb Foods, Always Best Care, and more. Apply for a job today. Go to our livelihood website at wordworks.com. That is WURDworks.com, and just click jobs and start your search there. Once again, okay, now we do have, I'm told, Congresswoman Mary Gay Scanlon. She is joining us by phone today. Go to scanlon.house.gov for more information. She represents Pennsylvania's 5th congressional district, that is parts of Philadelphia, and she's in her first term as Congresswoman. She's joining us now here on Reality Check. Congresswoman, how are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me back on, Charles.
Excellent, excellent. I'm sorry, second term as Congresswoman, if I'm not mistaken. So I do
technically third, because I came in on a
third.
special, but
That's right. That's right. That's right. No, thank you for the correction on that. So I happily stand corrected on all of that. So always good to talk with you, and really appreciate you coming back as well. Congresswoman, wanted to get your first thoughts on this brewing scandal over the former Trump administration weaponizing the Justice Department against members of Congress and journalists. We're not so surprised about this, are we? We know the type of person that we were dealing with this. So how do you think Congress will probe and investigate this?
Well, I think you're right that it's a developing scandal. I mean, just since Thursday, we've learned so much more. Early last week, we were hearing about the journalists who had been targeted. Their cell phone information had been seized by the Trump administration. By later in the week, we're hearing that the Trump administration had been seizing data from members of Congress, their staff, and family members, including an underage child in one case. And then Saturday, we heard that they even seized the data from his former White House counsel, Don McGahn, who had angered Trump by refusing to go along with his efforts to obstruct justice and fire the special counsel. So, it feels a bit like it's the tip of the iceberg. We know that the Inspector General announced on Friday that for the Department of Justice that he'd be opening an investigation. The Judiciary Committee has called upon Attorney General Merrick Garland to act more swiftly, and Chairman Nadler from the Judiciary Committee said, we expect the Attorney General to act, and if he doesn't, then the Judiciary Committee will move forward.
I think the other thing here too, Congresswoman, is, just worries and concerns about people inside the Justice Department. People inside federal government, generally speaking, who carry out these kinds of commands. I mean, in some ways, this isn't unprecedented what happened with Trump, because President Nixon kind of did the same thing, right? But it's just, it always astounds me that, and I know we're going to need congressional hearings and investigation and probes to get to the extent of the who, what, when, and where, how. But I'm still astounded by, people, civil servants, career attorneys, potentially within the Justice Department. This is potential where they carried out these commands knowing that this wasn't right, that this was wrong.
Well, you think about what's happened in a lot of our government agencies, including the Department of Justice during the Trump era. We've seen a lot of people resign or retire early because they simply could not carry out these kinds of orders. We've seen other people try to stay in and hold back the corruption, convinced that, they might be doing a better job inside. But so far what we're seeing on this one is everybody's denying they had anything to do with it. I think Barr and trying to think, one of the acting attorney generals, Rosenblum, they've said, I knew nothing about this. So it'll be interesting to see how this shakes out. You don't subpoena phone data on members of Congress without someone pretty high up in the administration knowing it.
Yeah. Hey, Congresswoman, when do you think we get to the point where we're codifying presidential behavior? A lot of presidential behavior or conduct is based on traditions and norms. It's not really law. They're not really rules.
Right.
And so, but people are under the impression that they are. But I think, especially as a member of Congress, I mean, have you all given some deep thought to this, and maybe coming around to a realization, at some point soon, we need to start codifying what this behavior is, or presidential conduct, to make sure we don't have these issues in the future?
Well, we've certainly been thinking about this for most of the Trump administration. One of the earliest things we saw is that it has simply been a custom since Richard Nixon that everyone running seriously for the presidency would turn over their tax returns so people could see where their money came from and who they might be beholden to. Trump's the first one in 40, 50 years who's refused to do that. As you said, there are a lot of things that have not been enacted because in the past our leaders have, adhered to at least a certain level of ethics and been able to experience a certain level of shame for unethical conduct. But clearly that was not the case the last 4 years. So last term we did introduce, Chairman Nadler and Hakeem Jeffries and others introduced a package of bills that would codify some of these norms of presidential conduct, including not hiring your children and, the standards for, how your finances are handled so that you're not grifting off the federal government. So I fully expect that kind of legislation, to go forward, if not immediately, because we've got Mitch McConnell still blocking a lot of things in the Senate, then after the next election cycle, because I don't think the American people are going to stand for it. And if we can't get it through this Congress, then we'll have to change it and get it through the next one.
Yeah. We're talking with, if you're just now tuning in, we're having a conversation with Philadelphia area Congresswoman Mary Gay Scanlon. She represents Pennsylvania's 5th Congressional District. Scanlon.house.gov. That's the website. That's where you go to get more information, particularly if she's your Congresswoman, and to also get in contact with her office either in Washington, D.C. or offices in Pennsylvania. Scanlon.house.gov. She's joining us by phone here on Reality Check. Phone lines are open in case you have a question for the Congresswoman. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Congresswoman, want to get your thoughts on now calls by Republicans, by your Republican colleagues, and then Republican state legislators and others to audit Pennsylvania's 2020 election results. So we see this that's been unfolding for some time in Arizona. So now they're targeting Pennsylvania, questioning those results. What are the moves to counter that? Because it's unnecessary and it'll be very expensive if it's done. But what are currently some moves or strategies to counter that activity?
Well, part of it is public education. There is nothing wrong with Pennsylvania's elections. Like the rest of the country, Pennsylvania ran a safe and secure election. And, you know, we interviewed the director of the FBI last week on Thursday. And we talked about the difference between interference, which is where someone goes in and actively messes with the election rolls or the results or the ballots, and the difference of election influence. And that's where you just talk smack about it. And what we are seeing is election influence. Everybody, law enforcement, intelligence, all of the campaigns, the courts, everybody who's looked at our elections in Pennsylvania said they're fine. There was no massive fraud. But what we are seeing is influence, people trying to undermine confidence in our elections. And it's been President Trump, his supporters, it's been the Russians and the Iranians. So, you know, it's all part of this big shell game to get people to not trust the results. And it's just wrong. It's completely unethical. And the weird, perverse part of it is it's actually inspiring people to try to cheat in our election systems. And we've seen multiple Trump supporters in Pennsylvania try to vote for their dead relatives or vote more than once. Now, they've gotten caught because our elections are secure. But it's really bizarre that people, you know, trying to say that there's a problem is actually creating a little bit of a problem. But it's still, you know, not enough to actually undermine the elections. But so we need people to be aware that, you know, they're trying to be played and to resist that. You know, we've got a couple big bills, H.R. 1, the For the People Act, and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act that we need to push through. The House has passed them. The Senate needs to take them up, and unfortunately we're seeing that they're likely not to get passed because of the filibuster. So if that's the case, if the Senate can't do its job, then maybe the Senate needs to change its rules.
Do you have those, you know, constant conversations with, you know, some of your colleagues, Democratic colleagues in Harrisburg about, like, you know, what's over the horizon, the potential of, like, a really destructive and disruptive election audit, so-called audit, the likes of what we're seeing in Arizona. And so, you know, we have H.R. 1, H.R. 4, but, you know, the certainty over those two voter advancement bills is just, that's all in doubt, right? Like, we don't know if we're going to pass that through the Senate. Maybe more so H.R. 4 than H.R. 1. We can get into a discussion about that in a moment. But what's the level of coordination like between, you know, like the congressional delegation or Democrats in Congress in Pennsylvania and also Democratic state legislators, and trying to figure out, okay, well, how do we prevent this audit from happening? Or if it does happen in Pennsylvania, you know, how do we limit its destructive impact?
Well, of course, we've got this interesting situation that the Democrats in Congress, or at least in the House, have a majority. Unfortunately, in the Senate, it's just a tie. And in the state legislature, the Democrats are in the minority, which is where a lot of the noise is coming from. Look, it is noise. It is not real. There's nothing wrong with Pennsylvania's election system. The results were accurate, and anyone saying differently is trying to do it for their own personal political gain. Now, you know, we do have a Democratic governor who can veto legislation. Doesn't mean that some of these bad actors can't make a lot of noise. But I think an interesting thing that happened last week is that Attorney General Merrick Garland said, the U.S. Department of Justice will be enforcing voting rights, which is something that has not happened for the last 4 years. There were about 17 active cases under the Obama administration around the country with respect to critical voting rights. And no new cases were filed under Trump, and his Department of Justice actually reversed the positions on several of the cases. So I think we're going to see a very active Department of Justice if the individual states try to start interfering with people's constitutional rights.
Mm-hmm. We're talking with Mary Gay Scanlon. Once again, if you have questions, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. The federal emergency relief dollars, Congresswoman, how are we tracking that or ensuring that that money is, one, not stuck in Harrisburg, not held up? You know, for example, you've got like $350 million in mortgage assistance that appears to be held up in Harrisburg right now, you know, primarily by Republicans and that legislature, but that's federal money. So, like, how are Republican lawmakers able to like delay and hold up essential federal monies like that? How do we? And then, you know, the other question is about transparency. How are we making sure that this money is being tracked and people are using it? You know, because I hear like on rental relief, for example, not just Pennsylvania, but a lot of other states and places where like they're not spending the majority of their emergency rental relief money. This is monies that were received from the federal government to immediately help people who are backed up on rent. But we still have this issue, this problem.
I agree. And we do have the Oversight Committee led by Majority Whip Jim Clyburn, which is responsible for making sure that the provisions in these packages that provide funding are appropriately spent. Certainly, we're asking folks to let us know when they see, if they see misspending in particular areas, you know, within our individual districts. You know, we're constantly having this balance between trying to make sure that the money can get out quickly versus making sure that it gets out and gets to the right people. So each of the relief packages that Congress has passed got tweaked moving forward. So the initial package that had paycheck protection programs for small businesses, in the initial package, it was going to far too many large businesses, wasn't reaching the intended recipients. So we tweaked the provisions going forward to drive those funds more to small, minority, women-owned businesses, using credit unions and other banks that are going to deal more appropriately there. You know, we saw this same kind of games playing from the Pennsylvania legislature with respect to, I think it was the CARES Act, where there was a lot of money for eviction and rental relief. And what we saw was they didn't spend it, and they ended up spending a big chunk of it on the correction system, which is not the kind of housing that we were trying to promote. In fact, it's absolutely the reverse. So, you know, some of it is, again, making sure that people understand that that money's out there and it's meant for their benefit, and they should be demanding it from the legislature. But there are back-end oversight provisions from Congress. And, you know, God forbid that people get put out of their homes when the money was available, but the Pennsylvania state legislature refused to authorize it.
Yeah. I wonder, I want to ask you about this, your feelings on this, Congresswoman. You know, when you're going throughout your district, you're talking to constituents, because I see this comment a lot, and I hear this quite a bit, and I have these conversations quite frequently with the public, and they see Democrats in the majority. They see Democrats controlling the White House. They see Democrats in the majority in the House. They see Democrats technically in the majority in the Senate, even though they don't have enough numbers to get over the filibuster, that 60-vote filibuster, which means you need 60 votes to pass legislation. Most people, the majority of average Americans, don't know what the filibuster is, don't understand that that's what's holding things up. But still, how do you have those conversations with constituents, with members of the public, when they say, like, hey, you know what, you guys are in the majority, how come you're not getting anything done?
Yeah. Well, it's a variation on the same conversation we've been having since I got in there, because when I got in 2018, we flipped the House, and the House has been really, really busy. We passed almost 500 bills in the 116th Congress. But, you know, most of them, the majority of them, couldn't get through the Senate. So it's not that Congress isn't doing its job, it's that the Senate isn't doing its job. And that means we really need to lean on the Senate. Everybody needs to lean on the Senate. And if the Senate can't make itself functional, then we need to change the Senate, whether it's changing the rules or changing the people who are there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's a longer game, but it's the only way to make it work.
Yeah, you know, and so, you know, Pennsylvania is going to be a major battleground as far as the U.S. Senate, the open Senate seat I just recently saw some tea leaf reading with respect to that U.S. Senate seat. Pennsylvania is a toss-up. Can we kind of talk about that for a moment before I let you go,
Sure.
Congresswoman? As far as because I know you're a congresswoman, elected official, but also you got to get reelected, and you also have to occasionally coordinate with people in your party. And so I wonder about Pennsylvania state Democrats. Are they really understanding how severe your position is or their position is statewide? Like, do they understand that there's an election, a major election, and that Pennsylvania is a major battleground for a U.S. Senate seat, state legislature, and the governor's seat all at the same time? I don't see that sense of urgency in the Pennsylvania Democratic Party. I'm wondering if you see it, because I'm not seeing it at all. They don't even want to come on this program to discuss it like they used to on a regular basis before the 2020 election. And so I'm really just stumped here. I'm trying to figure out if you all, if Pennsylvania Democrats understand, hey, listen, this is a really dangerous moment we've got going on here. And Pennsylvania, once again, is going to be in the crosshairs in 2022.
Right. I would love to see the day when Pennsylvania has a calm election. Because in 2018, I had a 16-way primary, and of course, 2020 was just a mess with the former president targeting the state at every step of the way. You mentioned we've got a governor's race, a Senate race. We're also going to have congressional races next year, and we're losing a seat. So some of the hesitancy is probably about the fact that we don't know where people are going to be running in Congress next year, and we probably won't know until late because it's been the history that our Republican legislature messes around with this till the last minute. So, we're going to go from 9 Democrats and 9 Republicans in terms of representing us in the House of Representatives to, probably 8 and 9, but that's going to be a pitched battle. We may have members running against each other. I certainly feel a sense of urgency because I don't think the things that caused me to run in the wake of the 2016 election have gone away. Trump may not be president, but Trumpism is still very, very much with us because the former president's supporters will not, call out his big lie. I suspect that the reason we're not seeing a unified voice from the Democratic Party yet is because we have a lot of people in contention for some of those seats. Good news is we have some really well-qualified folks running. Bad news is they've got to beat each other up first to get through the primary season. So I would expect that we would see everybody come together at that point. But, primaries make it difficult to do that.
Yeah, primaries do make it difficult to do that. So we're going to be watching that all very closely. We've been talking with Congresswoman Mary Gay Scanlon, representing Pennsylvania's 5th Congressional District. Go to scanlon.house.gov for more there and how to get in contact with the Congresswoman. We'll talk with you again. Always a pleasure to have you on, and thanks so much. Be safe.
Absolutely. Thank you, Charles. You have a good day.
All right, you do the same. All right, take care. Okay, let's take a break, and when we come back, more reality check here on 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
WURD is supported by Temple University, which is Philadelphia's public university. At Temple, students are surrounded by changemakers who offer meaningful contributions to our city, country, and the world. Our facility, staff, and students are thought leaders who propose solutions for racial disparities, break down barriers to opportunity, champion equal rights, and challenge oppressive ideas. We believe that empowered minds preserve, and every member of the Temple community deserves space to shine.
This is not a fad for us.
We will not resume our regular programming when things die down. We're not black to help our bottom line or because it's politically correct. We're not joining a fight. This has been our fight, our message, our people. Black lives have always mattered here. We are
undeniably,
indefatigably, unapologetically, permanently Black Talk Media.
WURD. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
Okay, we were just waiting on our next guest. We're just going to open up the phone lines, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check while we wait on our next guest. I want to have some conversation, too, about the plight of black farmers, and that's what our next guest was supposed to come on to talk about what's happening with that. We just had, news over the weekend that there is a federal judge who halted the $4+ billion loan forgiveness program that had been designed out of the American Rescue Plan for black farmers, and that's in response to a multi-year lawsuit that the loan forgiveness program that comes out of the USDA, this decision by this federal judge comes out of a lawsuit in which white farmers are saying that the $4+ billion relief for black farmers is racial discrimination. So they're claiming reverse discrimination. It's always important when you hear about these federal judges who rule in a certain way, who issue these kinds of orders, because this is a temporary restraining order that was, I think it happened on either Thursday or Friday, that was issued by this federal district judge. You have to know what president appointed that judge. I think it's really incumbent upon media outlets to say, I do this regularly on Reality Check. If every now and then I hear about some interesting federal decision or federal court decision that's very impactful, particularly on our community, I'll let you know who appointed that judge. Most news outlets do not do that as a standard practice, and they really should. It was the federal district judge was William Gracebach. It's a federal district judge based in Milwaukee. Judge Gracebach was appointed by President Bush in 2002. So there you have it. And then and it's you can predict, because courts are political. Never let anyone try to persuade you or try to outshout you or say or try to insinuate even or hint that courts are unbiased. That's the most unbiased feature of American public policy or the way American government operates. It's always political. The courts are always political, even down on a local level. Even when it's not a federal court, it's very political. And so especially in terms of the federal judiciary, federal judges are appointed by presidents. Presidents are partisan. They're picking their friends, or they're picking people their friends have recommended to be in a federal judgeship. Republicans do this a lot more. A lot more nefariously and more sinister than Democrats do. They pay a lot more attention to those partisan details. They want very ideological judges sitting on the bench. And so, no, George Bush was nothing like Donald Trump, but George Bush was still a hardline conservative, and he made sure that hardline conservatives, and his father was the same way, Bush 1, they made sure they appointed hardline conservatives to the bench. So if you're a conservative lawyer, or if you're a group of white farmers and you're claiming reverse discrimination simply because black farmers are getting, loan relief or some sort of relief through a U.S. Department of Agriculture through a federal loan relief program, you're going to have a friend in a federal judge who's been nominated and appointed by a Republican president, by a conservative president. So you can tell the trajectory of a federal case, what the outcome will be from the moment it hits a district court, it goes through Circuit Court of Appeals, gets to the Supreme Court. You can tell at least in those lower court rulings how it's going to end up. Simply by looking at who's the judge that's deliberating, or pack of judges that's deliberating over this case. If it's like a 3-judge panel, and the majority of those judges, for example, were appointed by Republican presidents or by conservative presidents or presidents with conservative leanings, not, you can best believe they're going to rule or deliberate in a very conservative way. So, it's just really important to understand. So there was and maybe we need to kind of change our language a bit when we talk about these federal cases, because we do need to pay attention to the federal courts. That's another system. It's another branch of government that you need to pay attention to, and that you should be very concerned about, because that directly impacts people's lives. Because we heard, right, people were celebrating a little bit because we heard a few months ago, oh, wow, black farmers, and there's very few black farmers to begin with already as is. Black farmers who are already struggling are going to get anywhere from $4 to $5 billion in federal relief. Biden hooked it up in the American Rescue Plan, and they should, right? But now that's being held up by a federal judge. No, we need to start changing our language. By a federal Republican judge, by a conservative appointed or Republican appointed federal judge in Milwaukee recently ruled. We need that so people understand, who's doing this. Where's this coming? It's not just some random, innocuous federal judge. Stop treating the federal bench like it's unbiased. Stop treating these judges like they're unbiased. I mean, even on the state and local level. I mean, there's a judge, there's a black woman in Philly who's on the Court of Common Pleas, who supports a bunch of QAnon traitors. And she's out there, has been out there publicly, openly, spewing conspiracy. And she's a judge. She's an elected judge in Philadelphia courts. So, it's wonder how she's ruling, right? To this day, and most people in Philadelphia don't know that. But it's important to know, how political and how partisan these types of people are, even on the federal bench, even when they're appointed, because they're appointed by elected people, by people who are very partisan. And so, that's how that game is played. And the more we understand it, one, the more we're able to navigate it. And then two, the more we're able to counter it or design it and to our best interest and our best interest. There was one time where our community focused quite a bit on, or paid a lot of attention to, what happened in the courts. And we got a lot done through the courts. We don't pay attention to that stuff nowadays. And it's going back to Peter Groff and Andrew Gillespie's point about people who are now in politics and public policy, people who call themselves policymakers, call themselves legislators, but, they spend an inordinate amount of time, they have their staff spending an inordinate amount of time on social media, right? So Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez stands out as one. So, when you look at her record, she's not spending a whole lot of time introducing, okay, she might make you feel good, and you're like, whoa, did you see the AOC clap back? What? She told him. But it's she's not introducing a whole lot of bills. She's not passing any bills. Same thing with Congresswoman Cori Bush out of Missouri. Or, even a Jamal Bowman. I'd like to see them. I think Cori Bush is starting. You can see her turn around. Or Ilhan Omar, who, keeps, it's time for Ilhan Omar to go. You got to, you got to learn how to manage that conversation better. Yeah, okay, totally agree. There's some suspect things happening in the Middle East, and yes, highly questionable things that the Israeli government is doing. But you're a sitting member of Congress, and you sit on the House Foreign Relations Committee. So you're going to have that conversation in a different way, in a much more professional way, as opposed to throwing smoke on social media. It's you got to, legislators are there to legislate, to craft policy. That's what they have to do. There's a lot of things that I agree with that any of those members, different platforms that they represent, there's a lot of things I agree with that they say, but it's I want to see you legislate. I want to see you draft that into a bill, and I want to see how you're going to get that bill passed, right? So effective members of Congress that come to mind are Lauren Underwood out of Chicago. She's doing some work. She's quiet. She's not on social media all day. Or Ayanna Pressley, even, who struck that balance. But Ayanna Pressley is former legislator out of Boston, and some of her stuff gets passed. When you look at that, the folks like the squad. You know, the person on the squad, you know, Ayanna Presley's on the squad, but the person on the squad who actually is doing some work and is getting stuff passed was Congresswoman Ayanna Presley out of Boston. So it's like, you have to look at that's always very relevant in that conversation. Okay, finally, we got our guest. Next guest is as part of our CAP Corner, our ongoing conversation series with the Center for American Progress, based in Washington, D.C. CAP Corners, which we do in conjunction with Center for American Progress. Go to AmericanProgress.org for more information. Zoe Willingham is a research associate for the Economic Policy Division at the Center for American Progress, which is still talking about black farmers, which we were just talking about a moment ago. Zoe joins us by phone. Zoe, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on.
All right, excellent. No, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. So I want to get your thoughts on this. We were just talking about this federal judge, Bush-appointed judge, Bush 2 appointed judge, who ruled that that federal pandemic relief dollars going to black farmers is basically a mode of reverse discrimination. That's what white farmers are saying. Your initial thoughts on that?
Yes, of course. Well, first of all, you and I both know that reverse discrimination is not a real thing.
Right.
You know, racial discrimination comes from, you know, white supremacy. You know, the position of power that that white people get by virtue of their race, and is you know, and is a relational power dynamic. So that's just ridiculous. You know, it illustrates just how, I think, partisan some of these federal judges are, and the importance of making sure that whoever, whatever progressive or Democrat is in power, that they really prioritize appointing federal judges that actually see what's going on and want to help people instead of obstructing attempts at progress and justice.
Now, black farmers constitute only, I think it's what, like 2% of the overall farmer population. So kind of map out or kind of paint for the audience, Zoe, how significant or how important something like debt relief or loan forgiveness from the USDA is. This is a very struggling segment of the U.S. farming sector, agriculture sector, and you know, it's funny when they're getting federal relief or federal loan relief. It's painted by folks who filed that lawsuit as a form of welfare, but white farmers have been getting what they like to call subsidies for years, and we've never had a problem with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and the pandemic relief for farmers that was passed over the last year prior to this debt relief, 99% of that went to white farmers. Just 1% went to farmers of color. So they already got theirs.
Right.
Black farmers were, in fact, disproportionately hurt by the pandemic in many ways because their operations are, on average, smaller. And, you know, they already have, you know, they already face many structural barriers and have difficulty competing in the market. So, you know, the complaints from the plaintiffs in this case is quite frankly ridiculous, especially when you take into account, you know, not just direct bailouts, but the years of advantages that white farmers have gotten through, you know, federal crop insurance, emergency, you know, weather emergency programs. You know, there's a whole universe of USDA programs that have been disproportionately benefiting white farmers for 100 years.
Right.
So, you know, it's just a problem, of course, when black farmers get it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, suddenly it's welfare when we get it, subsidies when they get it. Zoe, farming is very important because people have to eat. We have to eat in order to survive and exist. And so I do wonder about that other conversation because we have this very small black farmer population. We do have this growing urban farming movement, you know, a lot of, like, for example, young black folks, and that's a big movement that's really significant and rising in a place like Philadelphia and other major cities. I have had some conversations with some folks about how can you form that alliance between like rural black farmers or the traditional rural black farmers and black urban farmers. But how do we get more black people involved in the agriculture sector and agriculture technology? That's going to be really important. Congress has a hearing, I believe, on Wednesday. The House Agriculture Committee has a hearing specifically about that, about funding for the HBCU college institutions that are the land-grant universities, about getting the USDA to fund more, put more money into those, encourage more students to get into agriculture, especially black students. So how do you think, because that's going to be really important too, especially when we got climate crisis to contend with?
Yeah, absolutely. The role of HBCUs in fostering the next generation of black farmers is, you know, it's indispensable. So I think that that's a really great place to start, and that's something that is actually contained in the Justice for Black Farmers Act that was introduced by Senator Booker back in February. But in addition to barriers to accessing education and the technical know-how, another one of the major barriers that young farmers encounter is access to land. Agricultural land is extremely expensive. A lot of young people today are exiting the education system with a lot of student debt, and so financing a mortgage on the farm is unimaginable. And of course, you have a lot of farmland is not even exchanged on an open market. It tends to pass, down from generation to generation, and so that shuts out a lot of black farmers by definition, almost. So in addition to actually training the next generation of farmers, we need to make sure that they actually have access to land. So that would be, you know, fair and affordable financing, and it could take the form of a Black Agricultural Land Trust, which is also in the Justice for Black Farmers Act, and was something that Abril Castro and I wrote in our 2019 issue brief on black farmers. You know, that would make farmland a lot more accessible to the next generation, so that we can actually see, we can actually give aspiring farmers of color a chance at realizing their dreams.
All right. We've been talking with the Center for American Progress's Zoe Willingham. They are a research associate of economic policy at the Center for American Progress. Go to americanprogress.org for their research and briefings and very closely looking at issues like this. Zoe, definitely got to bring you back and expound more on it. We've been watching it very closely and talking with a number of people on this program about the plight of black farmers, and also trying to build up that the next generation too of black farmers, and how to help build up that sector. So it'd be great to have you back on. Thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Take care. Be safe. Okay, let's take a break, and we'll be right back here on Reality Check.
Hi, it's me, Gia Peppers. Tune in to More Than That with me live this weekend, or catch the show wherever you listen to podcasts. On our very special Juneteenth episode, we're talking to Griot Marsha Music, writer Baratunde Thurston, and image activist Michaela Angela Davis. More Than That is brought to you by General Motors. Visit GM.com to learn more about their actions and commitment to becoming one of the most inclusive companies in the world. Everybody in.
Well, our stories are our history. It is of ultimate importance that we tell our stories, because often our histories are ignored. You know, the places where most of the time people read their history, we're not going to be there.
I would love to see people in this country speak about the history, the more complete history. I think it adds more meaning to the things. So I want us to be less fearful of the past, more honest about it, and push through that shame so we can transform it into something better. Because when you're living in this limited and false story of yourself, you're not free. You're living inside of a lie. That's a cage. That's a cage of deception. So let's all get free. How about that?
You know, I want to expand our liberation. This ain't just for us, this is for this whole nation. I think we have the capacity to understand that when one family member suffers, the whole family suffers. What I hope for Juneteenth, for the entire country, I wish for everyone to understand that our freedom are inextricably linked to each other. You are not free if we are not free.
Want the latest in Word swag? Check out the shop tab on WURDradio.com. Hoodies, tees, and more in a variety of colors. The shop tab on WURDradio.com. Show the world that you're all about black. Talk media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check 96.1 FM 900 AM, WURDradio.com. WURD TV, WURD app. Joining me now by phone is Philadelphia Councilmember at Large Isaiah Thomas. Also Alexander Hsu, who's the founder and director of School Frontiers, which is an education research and evaluation firm in Bala Cynwyd, PA. And they both are joining me here to talk about Black-led charter schools, the plight of Black-led charter schools in Philadelphia. Join us by phone. How are you both doing?
I'm good. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. All right, Alex, great. I can hear you. And Councilman, can we hear you?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Charles. Can you hear me well?
Yes. Thanks for coming back. Really appreciate you as always. So, Alex, I'll start with you and I'll go to you, Councilman. Give us the basic data first. The percentage of all Philadelphia students who go to Black-led charter schools.
So there's about 12,000, maybe 12,500 kids in Black-led charter schools, if you want to consider this group of 20 schools, the coalition schools. There's about 12,500. And so that makes up about 18% of the Philadelphia charter school student population and about 7% of the overall Philadelphia public and charter school population.
Yeah, and and demographically, we're assuming that most of these Black-led charter schools, most of the students going to these Black-led charter schools, can you get a real quick racial demographic breakdown? They're Black students who go to Black-led charter schools, or that are choosing them.
It's about 98% overall.
Got it.
Yeah.
Alex, real quick too, before I go into you, Councilman, about this renewal issue, this existential threat to those schools. Alex, based on your surveys, based on what you're saying, what are the main reasons families are choosing these specific charter schools, Black-led charter schools, sending their students, taking them out of, or opting out of the Philadelphia public school system or conventional public school system? Because, charter schools are also Philadelphia district schools, too, because they get federal public funding. But what's the main reason that they contend they like to go to these schools?
I definitely want to say one thing first, which is that parents have a lot of reasons for choosing something that's not their default school. It might be where they work, what their work schedule is, all kinds of things. But generally, when you're looking at schools of choice, and about 25% of Philadelphia kids go to private schools. So that's a whole other issue. But about a third of the kids in Philadelphia go to charter schools. And the parents who are choosing these schools generally are choosing them for two big reasons. One is it's more convenient for them based on the school schedule or where they're located or any of that kind of stuff. And another is perceived safety of the school.
Yeah.
For example, they believe that the school, has a better bullying policy, would more likely to handle their kids' particular issues, whether it's walking to school or whatever it is.
Yeah, got it. So, Councilman, we've talked about this before. I've heard you talk about it, and a few of your colleagues in council has some real concerns about Black-led charter schools not being renewed. And so where are we with that right now? Because, I mean, I remember a couple of weeks ago you were saying, like, you hadn't even talked to you, or you weren't getting any communication from the district's charter school office. And you were highly concerned about that. You kind of suggested that there's kind of this non-renewal threat that these Black-led charter schools are constantly under. It's kind of criminal, the way kind of things are panning out. Just where are things right now with that?
Yeah, I mean, so where we are with that right now is we have heard from the school district of Philadelphia as well as the school board, and what they communicated to us is that all the charter schools who were up for renewal have been granted 5-year renewals, but there is one charter school that had what they're calling a surrender clause that was included in their renewal proposal, and of course that was a Black-led institution. So where we are with the current status of renewals of charters is one issue, but there's this other issue that we have to deal with as far as retroactively looking at past practices and behavior systems that's in place and figuring out an evaluation process that works moving forward. You also asked why people choose these type of institutions. I do want to add curriculum and culture to why people choose these type of institutions. I myself believe in African-centered pedagogy, and I also believe in giving young people a cultural different than what you see in a lot of our traditional neighborhood comprehensive schools. And so when I think about my experience being a coach, when I think about the young people who I've had the opportunity to mentor, everything from the dashikis they wear to the service learning projects they do on another continent, we just can't replicate those things as it relates to the type of institutions that we want our children to attend. So I would want to add that to the list as well, because I think that's important. And where we are right now with charters is not a bad position in the city. As it relates to the current renewals, we do have significant concern around the surrender clause. But what we have to do is look at past behavior, past practices, and we've been told that that is going to take place. But unfortunately, the level of transparency and the level of cooperation that we want to see in the selection of who does that evaluation is not where we would like it to be. So we still have a ton of work to do outside of just actual renewals.
Councilman, I want to start with you. Here's my other question, though, and then I'll also bring you in on this, Alex. But I want to ask you, Councilman, I do have a real big concern as far as Black-led charter schools are concerned. I have a real big concern and worry about academic performance. So, like, you know, for example, universal charter school student proficiency, you know, it exceeds district Black students, but in some cases it doesn't. Like I'm saying, still, you and I both know, like, and I've talked about this quite a bit. I'm really concerned about high, like alarmingly high illiteracy rates that have never been resolved in Philadelphia. But I'm saying the reading proficiency and also the math proficiency performance of charter schools, of the Black-led charter schools, they're no different from Philadelphia public schools. So, like, when I go to a charter school, or if I'm a parent going to a charter school, I'm also going there thinking that, okay, I'm going to get a superior academic experience. The data I'm saying doesn't show that. And, I have real concern. I want the Black-led schools, trust me, to be successful. But I just really am waiting for, like, a reckoning where in Philadelphia, there's higher standards as far as what we expect from our students on just I want 100% reading proficiency. That should be the case with all Black students, especially at one time. I mean, that's why my grandmother taught me how to read at 4. As she grew up in the segregated South, she was like, you know, at one time, we weren't allowed to read. It was not permitted. And there just seems to be this tolerance of high illiteracy in Philadelphia. And I'm just, it boggles my mind. Why is that, Councilman?
The truth, so first, Charles, I'll say that I think that you have to have a certain level of credibility to communicate that issue. And I think when, as somebody who listens to your show and who's been on frequently, you genuinely care about Black folks. That's not the case across the board. So for me, I too am concerned about that issue. I too think that we got to do a better job as it relates to the quality of education that we're providing our children across the board. But for the seat that I sit in right now, and this is my argument to the school board, our job is to govern. not to and govern in a way where we have to assure that there is no racial bias. So the question that we have to ask, and this is not making an excuse for the institutions that are failing, the question that we have to ask ourselves is that when the predominantly led black schools have a same low performance rate as their white counterparts, why is the consequence much more severe?
Yeah,
so
right.
Again, I want to do all the training. Shoot, I'll do some guest lecturing, whatever I have to do to help support these institutions so they can offer a better quality education for our children. As an individual person, I always want to do that, and I always want to be here. But from the seat of governance, we just can't mesh those two issues. Right now, what we see is a practice that exists, whereas though less than 30% of the charter schools in the city of Philadelphia are black-led institutions, but 85% of the institutions that have been closed are black-led institutions. That's not an accident right there. We've seen in the evaluation process where a black institution and a white institution will literally have the same evaluation, but a different score. So why would the black institution be punished and treated in a more severe way than a white-led institution? And there's a number of examples of this, and that's why we're asking to examine and do a deep dive. Now, after we address that issue, Charles, I'm more than happy to try to provide, and we could do both at the same time. How can we provide the resources and support mechanisms that we know institutions need to better position them to provide better education for our children? So I'm concerned too, for sure, but that can't be a crutch in this bigger conversation of disproportionate treatment.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. It's very good points. Alex, just kind of get your thoughts too on because you look at that data and you also, you work with charter schools, kind of addressing a lot of those issues, and any insights on which you're seeing as well, and while we got like a couple more minutes left, and how that's being addressed. Like, what's that conversation inside those charter schools, the charter school administrations about addressing that?
Well, you're totally right about the what we need to do to improve the general academic achievement of black students and white students and every student in Philadelphia. We have a very high poverty rate in Philadelphia, which shows itself in a lot of different ways. That's not to make an excuse. I think that, but there's a lot of stress that goes on. And to just add to what the councilman said, in two ways. One thing is that the students are getting a whole lot more experience than what you see in these test scores. You just so many different things in addition to the reading scores that you see.
Yeah.
So we don't see those measurements, and we should. We really need to see those measurements. And the other thing is that we do have what appears to be some unfairly applied metrics that are being used to evaluate certain schools that put certain schools in jeopardy that other schools don't get into jeopardy. And part of that might be related to who's leading the school and how they relate to the school district and things like that. Whether it's a racist policy or not, I don't know, but I do see that there's some schools that are put into jeopardy with the same kind of statistics that other schools aren't. My big concern is that we don't.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
We don't have a good formula.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Councilman.
I just think he made a great point that I want to put an emphasis on, and this is why we're asking for the independent review, because the jury is still out as it relates to this idea that the black-led institutions are not educating their children in a way that is essentially effective. Now, I know that we've seen some problematic things in individual spaces as it relates to some test scores, but that can't put us in a position where we paint everybody with this broad brush that says that the black-led institutions are not getting the job done. I think that's a big reason why we want to see the independent review of the practices that have happened in the past, so we can have somebody who's a third party that has no bias that can come in and tell us something that's closer to an accurate story and an accurate narrative, because right now that's essentially not happening. I'm so sorry for interrupting, but that was a great point, and I just wanted to put an emphasis on why we're asking for this independent review.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that too. Unfortunately, I ran out of time, and it's an essential conversation. I really appreciate you both making time out of your schedule today, and I want to bring you back and have a continue conversation around this, because I think there's some good points here, and that we must consider. We've been talking with, that was Council Member at Large, Philadelphia City Council Member at Large, Isaiah Thomas, also Alexander Shue, who's the founder director of School Frontiers LLC. It's an education research evaluation firm based just outside of Philadelphia. Thank you both for coming on. So we'll have you back.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
Thank you for having me, as usual.
All right. Thanks so much. All right. Be safe to both of you. All right. Let me take a break, and we'll be right back for more Reality Check.
If you're struggling with alcohol or drugs, Recovery Centers of America can help. RCA's local inpatient and outpatient programs are founded on science and delivered with heart from an expert, caring team who will inspire and guide you every step of the way. Call 1-888-RECOVERY now to speak with a treatment advisor. At RCA, you'll be in a community that builds connections and fosters support from peers and RCA's team of medical professionals and recovery support specialists. At RCA's state-of-the-art campuses in Devon, PA and Mays Landing, New Jersey, they tailor your treatment to you and also offer specialized programs for patients with history of trauma, for patients who have achieved recovery but are experiencing a relapse, for young adults, adults 50 years and older, a confidential program for first responders and military, and a faith-based program. RCA answers the phone and accepts patients 24/7. And because it's local and in-network with insurance providers, treatment is affordable and accessible. Don't wait. Call 1-888-RECOVERY today.
Hi, this is John.
Hi, this is Juanita, owners of JD's Auto Body and Painting. We're located at 6300 Wayne Avenue, right there at the intersection of Wayne and Washington Lane.
We really like to thank all you WURD listeners for the support that you've given our business, and we really hope to see you in the future.
JD, tell them about our products and services we have.
We have a new state-of-the-art paint shop along with our body shop and detail shop. We can help you with the dents and scratches from the winter season.
Come to JD's Auto Body and Painting. Come on out and check us out. We're still honoring that WURD 10% discount. Give us a call, 215-848-5949. Again, 215-848-5949.
Thanks again for supporting our business. We really appreciate you.
See you at JD's Auto Body and Painting.
This is WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Independent Black Media.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
All right, we've got guests who are supposed to be joining us very shortly. We were trying to raise them. We'll have them on just momentarily. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065, 361-0900 here on Reality Check. So feel free to call in while we raise our next guest, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Phone lines are open here at the moment on Reality Check while we try to raise our next batch of guests. People have to understand that maybe I should put it this way to show people in a city like Philadelphia how alarming this is, because I don't think it's registering. I really don't think it's registering with the larger Philadelphia proper public. 64% of Philadelphia public school students cannot read. They're not reading proficient. 64%. So, because I always kind of do it in reverse, they give you the first numbers, which are this percentage of Philadelphia public schools are reading proficient, and that's just like 36%. So maybe we'll just do it in reverse and show that the vast majority, nearly 3/4 of Philadelphia public school students cannot read. A little under 80% of Philadelphia public school students can't do basic math. That's alarming. And then y'all are out here walking around in fear of your lives, wondering why we have a gun violence crisis. That's like the fact that there has not been, there's this cognitive dissonance. The fact that it's appalling. The fact that when we have public conversations about gun violence, which is top of mind right now, because people see that, we've got nearly 250 murders thus far. We're not even like a full 6 months in to 2021, and we're already half of where we were last year in the number of murders. Okay, so it's top of mind. People are talking about this public emergency, and it's not just murders. I mean, just people getting shot. These over 900 people. Outside of the murders, over 900 people have been shot in the city of Philadelphia that we know of, that have been officially recorded. Highest per capita violence rate, murder rate in the country is in Philadelphia right now. So that's top of mind. But the fact that people have that conversation about that violence, and in the same breath don't have a conversation about the stunted intellectual abilities and performance of young people in this city, it is astounding. It is astounding that y'all have not made that direct correlation. I feel like sometimes I feel like I'm the only one making that direct correlation or having that discussion in a very urgent way publicly. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating. It's like if you tackle things like that, you finally start to unravel, but you also start resolving a lot of these issues and these problems. And it's just like I don't see this. That's why I get very sensitive and I push back against sometimes, I might highlight, a successful Philadelphia public school student or two, or we talk about, oh, well, they're going to those elite schools. No. Like that's the standard that all students should be meeting. You want a situation where 100% of students or young people in the city of Philadelphia are reading, can read on a basic level. I'm not just talking about being able to read an Instagram post or Snapchat or a tweet. I'm talking about being able to read a full book. And yes, and it does, I do agree with one of the viewers on WURD TV. Yes, that does start at home. That really starts at home. That type of encouragement starts at home. But then when you have a system, the system that is legally responsible for educating its citizens on basic reading and math, can't teach basic reading and math to a majority of the young people who are going to become future citizens and future taxpayers, future workers, future tenants, and future homeowners in the city of Philadelphia. And it's like, over time, how are you going to expect people to be able to teach their kids in a standard average Philadelphia household how to read? Because then they've been in systems, they've been languishing in classrooms and in a system that's not teaching them how to read. Thank goodness, I ended up differently. But you know what? See, I'm not like some people out here. I want that for everyone. I want that for everyone. I don't want just for my household. Because, some black folks out there who think that way. But they'll like portray themselves as like, oh, I'm like down with the cause, I'm for the people. But it's like the whole advocacy thing. It's a hustle and it's a grip for them. They just want these things for themselves or for their cluster of people. But there's some basic things. These are basic things that we should all have, because if it's not enough if just a quarter of the community can read, can do basic math, owns a home, or has just some basic things, basic amenities. That's not enough, because then when the other 3/4 doesn't have that, that still creates a problem for that quarter. It's still a problem for me. It's still a problem for me and my family, because we live in black communities. I live in a black community. I live in a majority black community, in a majority black neighborhood. That's a problem for me, and that's what we're gonna do till the day we die, right? So it's a problem for me if, like, I know based on data, the majority of the young people in the communities myself and my wife, choose to live in can't read. That becomes a problem. That's a recipe for social instability. Like the social instability we're seeing right now with all this gun violence. But y'all folks refuse to talk about this high illiteracy problem. We have a black superintendent of a major big city school system. Let me word this carefully, because I guess I got in a little trouble for this like months ago when I made a similar statement and people misconstrued what I was saying here. So let me be very careful in how I say this. If you're the black superintendent of a major public school system that is majority black, I would assume, and you're a PhD. It's not like just random Bill Height or random William Height. It's not Mr. William Height. He's a doctor. He's a doctorate. So I'm assuming you know the history of black people's struggles with reading in the United States of America since 1619, and how at one point it was against the law for us to learn how to read, for people that look like us to learn how to read. It was against the law. So, as black folks, we have a special kind of sensitive history with reading. And that's why it's like the other thing too is like, you can't do anything in society. You can't get a job, you can't navigate, you can't get around if you don't know how to read. And then you're going to be frustrated if you can't read, and you're going to act out violently against other people, hence gun violence crisis. I bet the vast majority of people who are killing other folks that look like us in this city cannot read. Let's do a survey. I will wager you money, can't read. Vast majority of them, if not all of them, are illiterate. So they don't know how to process and comprehend things. And that's not their fault that they ended up, because they weren't asked to be born in a certain way, and then they did not ask when they were born that way for people not to teach them how to read, for systems, for a community not to teach them how to read. Because that's our responsibility as adults. You gotta take the steps to make sure your kids know how to read. So, you know, it's like I will wager money. So if you know that that's a problem, why isn't the city of Philadelphia doing anything about it? Why isn't anyone saying, you know what, we need higher academic and intellectual standards for our young people in the city of Philadelphia? Why are y'all lunching? Why are y'all lunching on that issue? I don't get it. 64%, nearly 3/4 of students in a majority black public school system do not know how to read, are not reading proficient. That is an emergency. So let's get to it. Okay, we finally got our guests. I'm sorry, they were just raised just now. Joining us now is Joyce Smith, Brian Harris, and also Yvonne Haskins, who's a lawyer. They represent residents of East Parkside, and in fact, tomorrow at 6 p.m., they have a major protest that's happening at the corner of Belmont and Parkside Avenues. And this is the site of a new proposed high-rise in West Philadelphia. And this is on a historic block. This is another problem. We have these ongoing problems with gentrification, so I've invited all three of them to talk about this here on Reality Check. How are you all doing?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Good, all right, excellent.
We're fine,
excellent.
Thank you.
All right, excellent. You know, you have. I'll start with you, Joyce. Residents of East Parkside. Who is that? And then, you know, what is this protest mainly about?
Well, this protest is mainly about neighbors are opposed to plans to locate a high-rise building on the corner of Belmont and Parkside Avenue, which they feel is incompatible with the single-family home environment they work so hard to create and restore and preserve. And some of the properties on this block is on the National Local Historic Registry. And we have tried to work with this developer in the past because this is not the first project that he's done in East Parkside that violates or exceeds what L&I in the zoning code said he can put in there safely and comfortable. So what's happening now is that we're fed up. We're fed up. He's not listening to us. We go to the RCO meetings. We vote against it, but this developer prevailed. So this building...
who is the developer again? I'm sorry, the name of the developer again?
Lev Yakubov is the one listed on the city's record?
Lev Yakubo is listed on it, but there are affiliates of Haverford Square, which is Lev Yakubo, Eugene Yakubo, and German Yakubo, and Eugene Nadovich.
Okay, guys, so this is like the individual developers. And then, Brian, and the proposed high-rise development, you know, how many stories are we looking at? I mean, especially when you just have like these residential homes in this neighborhood. And then two, but a deal was worked out, right? Wasn't a deal cut to prevent this type of building in the first place in that district?
Well, thank you for asking. So the developer's proposing a 5-story building on a lot that previously had a 2-story building. And that's a little bit deceptive because in terms of the number of feet from floor to ceiling, makes it sound like it's not a big deal, but it really is, because the property next door is approximately 38 feet tall. He's requesting a 96-foot tall, 69-foot tall. Thank you, Joyce. I transposed the numbers. It seems like it's 96 feet tall, but it's a 69-foot tall building, and so it would loom largely over it. And in terms of a deal in the past, we've had the first part of the zoning hearing, but only the attorney had a chance to speak. A resumptive hearing has been scheduled, and at that point, the community who didn't get a chance to speak last time will get a chance to weigh in and share their concerns about the overutilization of the lot, the land, and the density issue, and the traffic issue, and the trash issue that this developer is creating for our community.
And please understand that he is allowed by right to build 4 to 6 units, and he wants to put 15.
Have you, Yvonne Haskins, attorney representing residents of East Parkside, has there been a conversation with, okay, so first of all, there was from my understanding, you know, based on information in front of me, there was, you know, there was something of some sort of compromise that was worked out at some point. not a compromise, but there have been like a long time focus on this issue of like building like this in historic districts. Janine Blackwell, former council member of your district, had worked that out. You have a new council member. What's her response to Jamie Gauthier? I mean, what's her response to this? I mean, has she been helpful at all?
We believe she will be helpful. We understand from the staff person who's been working on this that they support the community. You may realize that there was an editorial not too long ago by the Inquirer that really tried to blast Jamie Gauthier for supporting the community on another overbuild project. This is going on in other parts of the city. You might remember Black Doctors Row on Christian Street, where there was a big moratorium, I believe, that Kenyatta Johnson has issued to stop the overbuilding there. It seems to be happening in black neighborhoods mostly, although it did happen on Jewelers Row. The board seems to be oblivious to historic neighborhoods and the character because of the need for housing in Philadelphia. And we're saying we know Philadelphia needs housing, but not housing that will destroy neighborhoods. This monster, it is a monster of a building. It has no relationship to the adjacent properties. It will tower over story houses that I doubt that they'll see the sunset ever again. It is. Think about this. It's a triangle of only 2,800 square feet. 2,800 square feet is about the size of a row house. And to put 15 units and 5 stories with a rooftop that's another story, it's just outrageous. But we're worried. We're worried that the zoning board seems to be ignoring all the remapping that was done, and quite frankly, the legal obligation in the zoning code that RCOs, registered community organizations, will have a voice and will influence zoning decisions in the Philadelphia.
Got it. Let's. I want to take a quick break. I want all 4 of you, because I understand we have Sandra Carter is also joining us by phone, another community advocate member as a part of this group. So stay on hold. I'm going to actually take all 4 of you over to the next segment so we can talk more about this, because I know you came on a little bit late, and I just want to make sure I grasp exactly what's going on here. And I think this is a conversation the audience needs to hear as well, because it's indicative of larger problems that are happening, broader problems that are happening throughout the city. So just hold on a moment. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back as we have we continue a conversation right now with residents of East Parkside about a very controversial overdevelopment project in East Parkside. So let's take a break, and we'll be right back.
This Black Music Month, as the city begins to reopen and we embrace the spirit of Juneteenth, WURD Radio celebrates Songs of Freedom.
I wish I knew how it would feel to be free. The gospel jazz tune composed by Billy Taylor and Dick Dallas, recorded by Nina Simone, became a civil rights anthem. Music offered a soundtrack that communicated unspeakable feelings and the desire for radical change during the era. Nina once defined freedom as having no fears, leaving us to ponder the question, what are we afraid of? This is a song of freedom. This is Black music.
All the things that I should say
This Black Music Month vignette was brought to you by Comcast.
Morning, Mama. How you feeling?
Great, and I'm ready for you today.
I'm checking in on you. Morning meditation?
Check.
Dressed and ready to work out?
Check.
Check your blood pressure yet?
And check.
Boom! Great job, Mom. And about those gold earrings?
No, ma'am.
Now more than ever, it's important that we protect our hearts and the hearts of those we love. Monitor your blood pressure daily and help each other stay motivated. Rally your squad to take the online pledge at releasethepressure.org. Brought to you by the Release the Pressure Coalition and the Ad Council.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDRadio.com.
All right, welcome back. We're here on Reality Check. We're still talking to residents of East Parkside. They have a protest planned for tomorrow at 6 p.m. at the corner of Belmont and Parkside Avenues in Philadelphia. That's the site of a new proposed high-rise development that's happening in West Philadelphia, but that's in a historic district. There's a lot of historic homes there, and obviously that's going to have a very severe and very major impact on a historic black neighborhood in Philadelphia. We've been having this continuous issue throughout Philadelphia. Sandra, are you there, Sandra Carter?
Yes.
All right, excellent. So, wanted you to kind of come in with your thoughts about this. The other thing too is just the zoning process. To me, it's deliberately designed to be. I've had conversations about zoning before in this program and how designed it is to obfuscate, to confuse, also, it seems like it's accessible to residents and transparent. It never turns out that way in Philadelphia. And so it seems like this is another case of that. Is that the case?
Yes, I would agree. Because the zoning rules are set in place for a purpose. And they have always been part of our community as far as I know. And the whole thing of it is we didn't have zoning laws, anyone could come in at any time to do anything and anywhere. When these houses was built, I don't know how long ago, they were set there for a purpose, and that's why a lot of them are considered historical places.
Right.
I have been in this community for over 50 years, and my parents worked hard to get that property that we have, and it's been beautiful living there, and I want to keep it that way.
Yeah.
When you make all these changes, you have to consider parking, you have to consider your environment in which you live.
Yeah.
All these things have to be taken into consideration before you come in and make changes.
Yeah, it really does. Joyce, going back to you. So, your thoughts on like that zoning process, and also next steps. Like, what do we think this protest will do? Will this move the needle on these discussions? Will this move the needle on the prospect of stopping this development?
I don't know if it's going to stop the development, but at least we can get the attention of this developer who we have been talking to for a really long period of time about our concerns. There were two groups in East Parkside that worked very hard with the Planning Commission, and at that time, our City Council Representative, Janie Blackwell, to get our area rezoned, to preserve it, because we have a lot of speculation going on, and this kind of project that's happening right now, this is what we were afraid of. This is why we had it, the area remapped, and now we have this developer that is eroding all of the hard work that residents worked on with the city to get our area rezoned so we could avoid this kind of development project.
I want to throw this question out here to you all about Joyce, Brian, Yvette, also Ms. Sandra, Yvonne, excuse me. Are we looking at why build a high rise of this size in a historical neighborhood, a neighborhood that's clearly residential? It's going to be cosmetically, aesthetically, it's going to look ugly. It just is not practical. I guess it's picking the developers are picking that site because it's cheaper to do a high rise like that. Have you all looked into if there are campaign contributions going into the pockets of certain elected officials in Philadelphia that are allowing that? So whereas, because it doesn't seem like this is a big deal to them. You said you hope you think that Councilwoman Gautier will respond to this issue with the same kind of fervor and rigor that Councilwoman Blackwell did, but I'm not seeing that yet. So it sounds like she hasn't done that yet. So I'm wondering, this developer is coming into this community thinking that they have carte blanche. They could just come in here and do this at this site. Have we looked at the political dimensions? Because that's always very relevant. Because developers, look at what the conversation we're having in council now or in the public right now about the parking tax cut. But then we find out the majority of these city council members are getting campaign contributions, rather generous ones, from a parking magnet in the city of Philadelphia. So I'm wondering if you all have made that connection.
Sure, we've tried, and we can as it relates to Jamie Gautier. She has really been extremely helpful, giving us good information.
Okay, okay, that's good to hear. Okay, I just want to make sure that I want to hear that, like, okay, she's kind of there on the spot, acting aggressively to prevent something like this. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Amy, let me say this. I think that Jamie Gauthier is probably the most qualified council person in city council. She has a master's in city planning.
Okay,
and
good.
She knows what we're talking about, and we expect her to give us the vigorous support we need. But I must say, you're right. Politics is playing councilmanic prerogative has been a death knell for Philadelphia. Controlling the land bank has been a horrible situation by city council. And so we know that backdrop is there, which is why we're having a rally. Our community, East Parkside, has shown me, as their lawyer, the kind of resolve that every community in Philadelphia has to begin to develop. We have to inspire people to know their power and to exercise it. That's both in voting, and that's also in speaking to the zoning board. Before we got this new zoning code, zoning used to be a great town hall process. If communities cared about something, they'd come to the meetings, they'd go voluntarily to the board and speak to the board. And the board listened to community civic organizations. Now, a recent vote by the board, in spite of 60 people at Springfield Avenue voting against a project, they voted to approve it. So I don't know what's going on with the zoning board. That's where we're focused. And trying to make certain.
Because I know now the Philadelphia City Planning Commission, that has commissioners. I mean, that's a board of 6 commissioners. They're appointed.
I mean, the zoning
I wonder about that. So who's on the zoning board? See, these are the things. That's why it's always important to kind of understand like exactly how that process works and who are the players. Because like if the zoning board is a body of appointed people, that's political. That's political. So it's like who's got a relationship with who that's allowing something like this to happen.
Exactly. We're really concerned about that, Charles. Thanks for mentioning that, because when you see the frequency in which the zoning board sides with developers, and then you look at the fact that the head of the zoning board was the city council person that put the 10-year tax abatement in place in the first place, and then you look and say, well, this job must be a pretty lucrative job in terms of the salary, to find out there is no salary. It's just a stipend. And say, well, why is this gentleman running the board when he's the one that's creating? I mean, clearly the scales are a little tipped here. And so we're reaching out to other RCOs trying to figure out what's going on here. Are you guys experiencing the same imbalance that we are? Because we're extremely concerned about these developers and the board's relationship. I mean, something's out of balance and out of whack here. I mean, we're not blind. We just got to figure it out. And we don't know where to begin, but we're going to look at each other and try to figure this out so that at the end of the day, all the RCOs who feel the same way can come together and try to figure out how do we get this back in balance? We have to wait for the next mayor. I mean, can we influence the current mayor to look into this, the DA? I mean, something out of balance here.
And I just want to add also that it's a horribly imbalance when you have community organizations or community groups or residents that are in low-income or minority neighborhoods. It's imbalanced because the developers come with these high-powered attorneys, and we were very fortunate and blessed to be able to get an attorney that's representing us, because if we didn't, we would not have the leverage when we go to the ZBA.
Got no respect. And just to follow up on what you said earlier, Mr. Ellis, the education piece, you talked about it earlier, how they intentionally undereducate our children and then wonder why they can't control their own community and destiny. I mean, it's
you're hearing a resolve
that we have to do something about.
You can help us to spread throughout Philadelphia. It would be great to have an RCO convention. So it might be necessary to amend the zoning code. Something is not only out of balance, it is undermining democracy. It's undermining community willpower.
Yeah. You know, the other thing too, the zoning board. I mean, the zoning board chair. We know that's Frank DeChico, right? He's a former city councilman. Frank DeChico. Right. Carol Tenari is the vice chair. It's, I mean, white chair, white vice chair. I'm not familiar with the overall demographic composition of the board. I mean, this is an all-white zoning board?
No, there is one. You can't really see him anymore because of the Zoom, but one of them is an African-American. I think he's an architect.
Only one African-American on the zoning board, one or two.
On the zoning board.
One or
yeah,
two.
And it's
but
one or two.
We don't want to alienate any political power we can leverage to talk about individuals on the zoning board. I'm advising my folks not to do that.
Okay.
Our interest is in the process. Our interest is in what is right. And we believe it is clearly our right to object to a 6-story building or a 5-story building on this tiny little lot. The other outrageous thing that you should know, Charles, is that they're using the Negro Ball Players League mural on the side of the wall, this little area. They're using that as the reason that they need the 5 stories, because that will help them to pay to relocate the mural to another part, other side of the street. And that's outrageous. They're not doing anything for this community by doing that, but they were able to get letters of support from the Mural Arts Program and from the Business Association because they would like for the mural to be moved. We'd like for it to be moved too. But if he can make a profit with 3 stories just as much as he can make a profit with 5 stories.
Right. The you know, so there's no direct conversation that's going on between you as resident advocates and the developer or developers. Like y'all
had a conversation with the lawyer and the developer.
You said you have.
They've agreed to reduce the height of the building to 50 feet instead of 50 feet. It'll be 59 feet with the roof pilot house.
Is there like a room for compromise? I mean, you just don't want that building at all. I mean, or would you like be willing to compromise where it's like down to an amenable level where it doesn't obscure sunlight and it doesn't obscure the historic feel and look at that neighborhood?
Right. We had agreed earlier to 6 units. The commercial on the first floor. That would be 3 stories, and it would be no more than around 40 feet.
Yeah.
Now, we've agreed to that, but he wants 50 feet with 12 units, and he won't budge. So that's what we're taking to the zoning board.
Yeah. We've been talking with residents of East Parkside. So the protest is planned for tomorrow. Any specific activities that people need to know about at that protest that's happening there at Belmont and Parkside Avenue? Anything that people should, I mean, come to the protest prepared to do? And, you know, any other sort of information? And what's the next step after this, after the protest? What will be the next step after this?
Thanks for asking, Charles. So, yeah, we're asking people to come out and continue to sign our petition. We should have about 500 by the time we're done in the next day or so. So we're trying to make sure we have the community really educated also. We're asking some of the other RCO heads in our region to come out and also speak to the group so that we can really start to work together. So, you know, we're going to have hopefully a little bit of music and a little bit of food, but we hope people come out, you know, so we can start to look at each other and figure out some solutions out together so we can work together so we all can benefit from this, because we're not going to lose. We're not going to lose. We've never lost a fight yet, East Parkside. In fact, if we do lose at the zoning board, if he gets 12 units, we'll be there to appeal it. And if he wins the appeal, we're going to take it to whatever the next level is. And if he wins all that, we're going to have our elders out there with wheelchairs and canes stopping the bulldozers. He is not going to build a 5-story, 15-unit building with all the trash, traffic, and congestion that's going to come with that. And then the units are going to be so small, 400 square feet for $1,500 a month. That's just too much. Our people deserve a better life than with this guy.
You know, the reason I wanted to highlight this too, what you all are doing and what you have planned for tomorrow and what you're going through is, you know, looking for a model or a template for that type of advocacy citywide, because the whole city is dealing with that issue, is dealing with that challenge, that problem. So it's like, maybe out of this effort, it's like, okay, we have a model that works. And we're also understanding this process. We know exactly who's on the city planning commission, who's appointed on it, because it's mayoral appointed. Who's on the zoning board of adjustment in Philadelphia? Who are the members of that? Who appoints them, et cetera. So I think the more people understand that, through episodes like these, the better we can guard against these this type of overdevelopment.
Right. We just want to increase resident awareness and also resident empowerment to bring attention to what's going on, not only in East Parkside, but other communities, our sister neighborhoods, Mantua, Brewerytown, Strawberry Mansion. So this is not just with East Parkside. We just want to increase resident awareness of what's going on in their communities so they can stay in their communities and make sure they preserve the integrity of their neighborhoods.
But to your point, Charles, you're right. We got to get a template that works, and we're making it as we speak. And the first thing is, as Attorney Yvonne Haskins said, you got to have resolve.
Yeah.
If you have resolve, you're halfway home. Then, of course, you have to have strategy. Then you have to have people. We have the resolve. We have the people. But we have to also make sure, we have to, as you said, make a template so that that more communities are able to work through this and effect change on that ZBA board so it's back in balance, so it's fair. We're not against development. We're just against overdevelopment. This developer has taken, in a span of 22 houses, if he gets this project, he's going to double the population between 4262 and 4306 Parkside. Double the population, double the parking, double the problems. Come on.
And then then it's a commercial property, so you don't know if it's built, like you don't know what's going to go on inside that commercial property. There's others, like what kinds of tenants are you going to attract? What are they going to do?
Exactly. It will affect our environment, and that's what we're most concerned about. We're trying to preserve our community.
Yeah. I'm going to have to let you all go, actually. I'm sorry because we ran out of time, but I really appreciate the conversation, so keep us posted. And everyone, Belmont and Parkside Avenues tomorrow at 6 p.m. is a protest that's been arranged, that's been scheduled and facilitated by residents of East Parkside. In fact, we've been talking with them, Joy Smith, Brian Harris, Attorney Yvonne Haskins, and also resident Ms. Sandra Carter. So really appreciate you all coming on this afternoon and spending some time with us and explaining what's going on. So keep in touch and keep us updated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Good time.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. Take care. Be safe. Okay, let's take a break, and we'll be right back here on Reality Check with open phone lines, by the way, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break. We'll be right back.
Need to replace your Social Security card? In most states, you can request one online with a My Social Security account. A My Social Security account gives you secure access to your personal earnings history and benefit status. You can also get a proof of income letter, estimate and apply for benefits, and more. Save time. Go online. Open a My Social Security account at ssa.gov/myaccount. Social Security. Securing today and tomorrow.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Olaniyan Adefume's goal is to assist families and students that are tired of the destructive input by the coronavirus. If you are interested in a math tutor, Olaniyan is offering small, reasonably priced classes that will focus on the PSSA test. Classes start June 21st. The students will have lessons, tests, homework, and a textbook to keep with PSSA exercises and explanations. Knowledge is power. Call Olaniyan Adefume, 215-678-3830 for pricing information and location.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
All right, phone lines are open 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Yes, always go to phila.gov, when we get into these conversations about development in the city of Philadelphia, particularly in residential neighborhoods and the potential displacement, the gentrification that happens afterwards. And in the wake of all that, go to phila.gov, find out first, and who is your city planning commission, who is on the city planning commission. There's 6 appointed members on the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. And so, get to know more about them. Also find out their public meeting schedule. they guide investment and growth in Philadelphia. That's the way they basically describe themselves. And the mayor appoints city planning commissioners. That's very important. They are folks who are traffic engineers, urban planners, architects, land use attorneys. We got 2 community representatives who sit on that appointed board. There are ex officio members who are also a part of that activity, so get to know them. That's all housed at philly.gov on the city's website. And then the zoning board, separate from the Philadelphia Planning Commission, but still, connected in many ways. That's the zoning commission is within the Department of Planning and Development, and they're technically officially called the Zoning Board of Adjustment. And so they regulate property uses, height, size, spacing of buildings, parking requirements, signage size and placement. Get to know them and their names, who they are, when they meet. Philly.gov. Just go to philly.gov or go to Google and then just Google Philadelphia City Planning Commission. Then separately Google Philadelphia Zoning Commissioner, Zoning Board of Adjustments, and get to learn more. I think it's an education process, in terms of learning more about who these people are who make these decisions, and then sometimes, you understand, okay, well, this is why, like my standard mayor, city council member, they're kind of got their hands tied behind their back. They can't do anything, or they keep saying they can't do anything. Okay, well, who are the people who are really making the decisions? Let me go straight there, and let me see how those relationships work out. Maybe I need to, go to those meetings on the regular and just kind of quietly sit and sort of watch the dynamics unfold. Well, right now, virtually can't do that. But, once things get back into that so-called normal cadence, maybe I need to kind of watch those relationships. Watch who, when you go to a public zoning board meeting or a public planning commission meeting, what that particular developer looks like or who their attorney is. But look at the dynamics. Look at the conversations. Listen in on the conversations. Sometimes you go to these types of convenings, and then you'll see they'll be kind of chumming it up off to the side before the meeting starts, talking about, oh yeah, maybe we'll do some, we'll go to, the steakhouse later on and get a round of golf. And remember, did you, talking about, just yucking it up, while before. That is a signal or a sign of a relationship. So, and it's like, okay, well, what's going on there? Are there truly unbiased decisions that are being made here? So let me go to Mr. JR out of Cheltenham, who's calling in for a reality check. JR?
Good afternoon, Charles.
Yes, good afternoon, sir. All right.
So I was all focused on the education thing. That tax abatement is going to be hard to defeat, Charles. I mean, but yeah. That's a heavy lift, man. But I had focused on the education thing this morning. First thing I wanted to mention is that there was a very great plan in effect in 2006. Tavis Smiley promoted the covenant. I don't know what happened to Tavis. I think he was probably a victim of the times, with the Trump administration or whatever, Are you familiar with his current activities, Tavis?
I'm not. No, I'm keeping track.
Okay. I think it's worthy of a look. But he endorsed the covenant, and that book, is very comprehensive. It has 10 covenants that he covers, that they cover in the application of progress for the community, for the black community. I'll just read the titles. Covenant 1 is securing the right to health care and well-being. Covenant 2 is establishing a system of public education in which all children achieve at high levels and reach their full potential. Very important.
Yeah.
Covenant 3 is correcting the system of unequal justice. Equally as important. Covenant 4, fostering accountable community-centered policing. Policing, I'm sorry. For fostering accountable community-centered policing. That's Covenant 4. Covenant 5, ensuring broad access to affordable neighborhoods that connect to opportunity.
Yeah.
Covenant 6, claiming our democracy. Covenant 7, strengthening our rural roots. Covenant 8, manifesting good jobs, wealth, and economic prosperity. Covenant 9, assuring environmental justice for all. And finally, Covenant 10, closing the racial divide, closing the racial digital divide. I think this should be.
It's some good. Yeah, it's a nice map, a nice kind of basic map, and there might be some rearrangement of priorities. I mean, if that was like you kind of listing them based on like what to prioritize over what else. But I appreciate. Hey, Mr. JR, I gotta let you go because I want to make room for a couple other calls that come up. I appreciate you laying out, reminding us about the covenant, and then kind of laying out what are some basic goals, some basic objectives. Let me go to Maurice out of North Philly, who's calling in for a reality check. Maurice.
Good afternoon, Rob.
Hey, what's happening? All right.
Question, and your caller just called, touched on when you was talking about earlier with the foreman, with the black foreman and the judge set aside. And the covenant he's talking about and what the farmers are talking about is the ratification of the 14th Amendment.
Yeah.
And because we didn't have a contract, that's why the covenant never took off.
Mm-hmm.
The question I have to you with the farmers and the situation of farmers and with the set aside.
Go ahead. Sorry, I mean to laugh. I always expect a question out of you, Maurice. So, so go ahead. No, but it's cool. It's cool. I just had to. It tickles me. Not in a bad way. I just was laughing at that. But go ahead.
What do you suggest? How we fight this thing, the farmer? How do you? That's question one. What do you suggest? How the farmers fight this thing, or what the judge does, and the set aside?
So it's three things are going to have to happen. A couple short term and a couple that are long term game, right? I mean, the first thing is like I don't know and I'm not aware of. I know the black farmers have sued before, so I'm like, okay, where's the big legal countersuit effort to this lawsuit that just crossed that hurdle in that federal district court in Milwaukee, Wisconsin? So I'm like, okay, well. We just, as a community, it was very easy for us to like easily lawyer up. We used to lawyer up quite a bit on major issues like this. I don't see that happening. Like, I just don't. I don't see that happening on that kind of scale like we used to have, like that our history shows, right? And so I'm like, where's the legal countersuit? So that's one. In the meantime, there's going to have to be a big push on, there is legislation currently in the Senate. You had Senators Cory Booker, Senator Ralph Warnock out of Georgia, Senator Elizabeth Warren working on the Justice for Black Farmers Act. There is someone who has announced, the Georgia Secretary of Agriculture, who's a Republican. His name is Black. I forget his first name. He's already announced a Senate run against Warnock, and I know he's using this black farmer situation, this faux outrage from white farmers, because he's going to be going after rural white farmer voters or rural white voters. He's using this situation to drum up support to then knock Warnock out. And that's going to put pressure on Warnock to possibly equivocate a bit on that Justice on Black Farmers Act, because Warnock wants to get a full term as a senator. And we want that too. So it's going to have to be like making sure that like Warnock gets that backup, but also making sure senators like Booker and Warren and others are hearing, hey, we want that Justice for Black Farmers Act. We want that passed. And then three, long game to the final part to your question, Maurice. Long game is, it's nothing wrong. In fact, it's a great thing to encourage our young people to get into the agriculture industry, agriculture technology. That's a huge growing industry. It's about, like, I think last I checked, it's nearly 10% of GDP. And we're going to have to, especially with climate crisis, we're going to need, food growers and agriculture are going to be really important. So it's trying to figure out, and there's a bunch of HBCUs like Florida A&M, North Carolina A&T, University of Maryland Eastern Shore. These are black schools. They're some of the leading agriculture science schools in the country. And they're giving money away for students to go there to get college degrees in agriculture science, biomechanics, biotechnology. These are important fields that are the future. Especially as we're dealing with climate crisis, we need to encourage our young people, our people, to get more into agriculture, science, industries. I understand, we've got this complex historic relationship with farming, but we're going to have to, resolve that. And we're looking at the future, and we're going to need to get more into that as a people, because it's big money, it's big business, but it also helps us control our food sovereignty. So those are that, 1, 2, 3, those are my steps.
Right. So I got one more question, Charles. Now, before I go to my question, I want to say this. You're 100% correct about the black students have to get informant. The thing is, though, we have to go back and study. Majority of the South are getting land grants and farm aid. They get welfare. And I'm talking about the colleges. Majority of your colleges in the South and the West they get land grants and they are farm schools. They have reforming money coming in, set aside. And we need to go back and study what they doing and how they getting this money. If you go back,
you're talking about the land grant universities down south?
No. You got colleges that's considered A&M.
Yeah.
Or agriculture schools still get land grant money and they get welfare.
Yeah.
And we don't know this, so we got to go back and study that economic thing and see how they bringing the stimulus money in to sustain what they're doing. Because if you go back and look,
you had, like, for example, we need to make sure that more money goes to, because you're absolutely right, Maurice, more money has to go to, so we have, like, and the majority of them are HBCUs. There are 19 land grant universities that are specifically focused on this kind of activity. Many of them are state schools. They're in places like the South. They have a big House Agriculture Committee hearing coming up in a couple of days. Congressman David Scott, black congressman out of Georgia, chairs House Agriculture Committee. I think is a number of other black congressional. They're trying to get more money to those HBCUs. So now we need to learn to get that. They were able to get, like, I think it was $80 billion. Am I right? I might be off a little bit on that, but they were able to get, I think it was 80 million. But anyway, they got some money out of the last farm bill, the 2018 farm bill, that went directly to those land grant institutions. But you need way more money than that. So, but you're right. I mean, Maurice, I ran out of time, so we need to talk more about it. But do pay attention to that House Agriculture Committee hearing that's coming up. We're trying to get the congressman or one of those ranking Congress people that's on that committee to come on by the time we have that hearing. But it's a very, very important hearing that's coming up. So anyway, let me wrap this Monday edition. I'm sorry, I'll take more calls tomorrow, but we have to wrap this Monday edition of Reality Check. I want to thank Jordan Booth. He's been on the board still. He just kind of stepped in for Troy Wilmore, and I really appreciate it. He's doing a fantastic job. And also want to thank everyone else as well. I'm Charles Ellison at Ellison Report on Twitter.com. We head into The Source with Andrea Lawful Sanders. That's coming up next. Thanks for your patience, Andrea. Everyone in Philadelphia and beyond, I want you to stay sharp, stay smart, but more importantly, please stay safe out there. God willing, I'll see you tomorrow, Tuesday, 10 a.m. sharp. Take care.